Good evening, everyone. I call the Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024 Peninsula School District Board of Directors meeting to order. Will you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have a statement that I would like to read before we begin the meeting this evening. As many of you already know, an Evergreen Elementary teacher, Jordan Henderson, was arrested last week by the Pierce County Sheriff. We understand that Mr. Henderson was charged with 9 counts of first-degree child molestation. Charges stem from accusations that Mr. Henderson touched students inappropriately. As a board, we are deeply disturbed this could have happened in one of our schools. The board is accountable to the community, and we take that seriously. Part of that accountability is a commitment to ensuring the safety and well-being of our students. We will be working closely with the district's administration and staff to support students and advocate for change where it's needed. Additionally, the district as a whole is fully cooperating with law enforcement. We realize now that this matters in the hands of the Sheriff's Office as well as the prosecutor, and out of respect for privacy of our students, the board defers to those agencies for any further comment. Meanwhile, as this situation continues to evolve, Superintendent Barr will continue to update our community as more information becomes available. Thank you. So we'll now move on with our agenda. Item 3 on the agenda is approval of this evening's agenda. Is there any discussion prior to the vote? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved by Jennifer and seconded by David. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is carried and the agenda is approved. We will start this evening with some exciting recognitions and celebrations. I think Superintendent Barr will be speaking about the first couple. We're going to start with the Purple Star designation.
Yes, I am very proud and honored to announce that Peninsula School District is one of 12 school districts in the state. We applied for the Purple Star designation, and as of last week or the week before, we are the first inaugural Purple Star cohort for the state of Washington. So I'm very excited about that. Had an opportunity to spend some time here at Swiftwater with their Purple Up celebration. So that was pretty amazing. And we look forward to partnering with our military families in ambassador programs and extending that to all of our students that wish to participate. So we're very excited about that. So that is the first announcement. I'll just roll right into the second one. Yesterday, we were visited by the governor's office, OSPI, multiple people from OSPI. We also had Puget Sound ESD Superintendent John Welch was here to celebrate both Artendale and Evergreen Elementary Schools for being nominated for Washington State. So they will be the only 2 nominees moving forward for the Green School Elementary Awards to the Department of Education in Washington, D.C. And on Friday, there's a live watch party announcement at 9 o'clock. If they were accepted, they will be the 2 elementary schools in the state of Washington being the Green Schools for the state of Washington 2024. And that is a pretty extensive 3-pillar extensive grant that includes sustainability, both for student programs, but also for the building itself, and the HVAC system and lighting, as well as wellness and health for the students and for the staff. So we're pretty excited about both of those schools being named and very honored. And I have to say that the governor's office and OSPI, they were pretty excited to attend. All of the Evergreen Elementary students planted a tree yesterday, as well as the board had an opportunity. Good job, Director Olson, for, hoofing it and making sure all the soil was in there. But all the students were able to help plant that. So that was 290 students outside. So we had great weather for it, and we're really happy. Thank you.
The next recognition is going to be our Future Chefs program, and we've got Katie Walters with who's the director of our nutrition services here to present that.
If I could have the chefs come up as well, you all know who you are. So we brought you guys some samples. So these are the top winners at the district. So we have 4 different categories. You guys can just stand there, and then I'll introduce you, and then you can maybe say something about your dish. We have 3 of the 4 winners here. So we have 3 students here throughout the district. So I will have them introduce themselves and tell you the award they won and the recipe that they chose to do. And we'll start with you.
Hi, my name is Amory Jackman, and I made the celiac-friendly millionaire shortbread. It has white and milk chocolate on the top, and then caramel in the middle and shortbread on the bottom.
Sorry to do this to you.
Sorry.
I've got a sample of this though.
I'm sorry to the rest of the room.
Maybe a little hard to My name is Smith William Morrison.
Looks good.
And I made puff pastry pizza roses.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And it's a rose.
Oh my gosh. And when I order a pepperoni pizza, I order it extra crispy because I like it when it's kind of baking. It's exactly how I like my
Oh yeah.
Hi, my name is Tark Morton. I made the King Ranch chicken. Yeah.
What's in the King Ranch chicken?
Chicken.
I like that so far.
Cheese, chips, and onions. King Ranch chicken. Yeah. Mhm.
So are these family recipes? Yeah.
Yes.
Family friend, like what's your favorite family recipe was the theme this year from that. The other winner that she's not here tonight, but that was a stuffed pepper, and she was from Purdy, Bella. And so overall, these contestants did a great job. They all came and cooked for us. We got to sample their recipes. They were chosen originally from 60 recipes down to 21 recipes that actually competed, and these were the top choices. Tark's recipes being the overall grand prize will actually be featured on our menu in May as an elementary option. So, and he'll get to actually serve it at his school, but it will be served at all the elementaries as well. So yeah, I would encourage you, if you haven't come, we do it once a year. Please stop by. I know you guys came, but anybody who hasn't, it's a fun, great event. So
It was. I just have to say how impressed I am because Superintendent Barr and I were able to go back there. But this is no kidding like a Top Chef competition. They were cooking, plating, serving. And then they had people like us who were asking them questions, and they graciously stopped to answer. But I know you guys were working really hard. So what was the best part of this experience for you? And what was the biggest challenge?
Probably not having an actual spatula.
Yeah, okay. So you're using
And-
different tools than what you have at home?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
I can't think of anything else. Needing a bigger pot.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, when we're cooking with multiple, we are spread thin on, you know, it's got lots of different pieces. As I said, we had 21 of those kids back in that kitchen, so.
Yeah.
It's kind of a
Wow.
crazy fun afternoon, so.
I just wanted to shout out, you had so many Sodexo volunteers back there. And then there were I saw many of those parents. You were going back and helping. It was really, really fun. And for someone that is not a good cook, I clean. My husband does all the cooking. I was so impressed with you just seemed to be at home. You knew what you were doing. You had a purpose. All of you did. And so it was really fun. We did not stay for the judging, but I think that we saw the best part. We saw the action. So thank you for sponsoring that, Sodexo. Thank you so much. I've never seen this before in my career, and it's just an amazing program.
So yes, it will be back next year. So.
How many years have we been doing it?
We've been doing it since I was here,
10 years at least?
about at least 10 years, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
A lot of fun.
Can we get a picture with you guys up here? Would you mind?
Do you guys want to go?
Can we get, Alec, would you be our photographer? I'm gonna have to turn my microphone on and do some ASMR while I eat the crispy pizza loaves. Good job, you guys.
You're very welcome.
Way to go.
Good job, guys.
Do you mind if we No, just munch away. We do have one more recognition that didn't make its way onto the agenda, but I would be remiss if we did not point out that we are celebrating Executive Assistance Week. So we'd like Tanya Beatty, would you please come up and stand in representation of your cohort of amazing district leaders, please. So our executive assistants. No. We need a picture.
You gotta come up.
We have something for you. So this group of professionals is really the backbone of the district. They do so much in support of PSD and rarely get to stand up here and be recognized. So Tanya is part of our team. We are a team of 7. And Tanya, we couldn't do this without you. So we just have a small token of our appreciation. And can we get another picture with Tanya? Oh, yeah.
Tanya is usually behind the scenes.
Yep.
I refer to her as the Great Wizard of Oz. Don't pull the curtain. She's got that.
Well, we're going to get in trouble for this later.
Is that one down here?
Okay. Okay, so we are going to roll on to item 5, which is everyone's favorite part of the night, the student school board representative report. So I think we're going to have Alec kick it off from Peninsula.
All right, good evening, everybody. I'm Alec. I'm from Peninsula High School. I'm the student rep. We got a lot of stuff going on right now, or stuff that's coming, stuff that happened. With sports, all spring sports are kind of in the middle right now. There's none like ending or just starting. It's all kind of like in the middle of their seasons right now. We have Piscataway Bowl coming up, which is like lacrosse's fish bowl essentially. It's this Friday. I think it's 8 p.m. at Gay Harbor High School. It could be 7 as well. Piscataway. I think it stems from original names from lacrosse. So yeah. And knowledgeable. They went to state a while back, but they ended up placing 6th place in state. So that's really exciting. Excited for them. Electra Higgins just recently in track beat her old school record in 3200 by 16 seconds. So she crushed it. She's constantly improving on herself. It's insane. Like, you'll see her anytime you see like a running event, you'll see Electra Higgins' name pop up, and she's like, "Oh, set a new school record" or something. It's awesome. We had our spring assembly recently. It went really well. We had a pie in the face. Mr. Benoit, another student, and I all got pied. And it was a great experience for everybody, but not so much for me because I had to get on a 3-hour car ride right after getting pied. So I was kind of covered in whipped cream, but that's fine. This year we started a new kind of event. It was our first annual Top Hawk. Top Hawk was like, we did it instead of Mr. Peninsula. So it instead of just limiting it to the guys of the senior class, we allowed all seniors to participate this year. It's a fundraiser for the senior class, raises a lot of money each year. Lots of fun acts, including one act they did an interpretive dance of Frozen's Let It Go. It was hilarious. It was awesome. Some other stuff. We have Teacher Appreciation Week coming up. Leadership's making posters for each teacher to put on their door and stuff like that. We got nice notes going out to all of them. So yeah. AP testing is starting soon. It starts in 2 weeks. First test is May 6th, and the last test is May 17th. So everybody's studying hard for them, getting ready, get good scores and stuff like that. We have SBA testing this Thursday, Friday, and next Monday and Tuesday for 10th graders. I think it's math and reading. And it puts all the grades on a 3-period block schedule. So essentially what that means is periods 1, 2, 3 on Thursday, 2 hours each, and then 4, 5, 6 on Friday, 2 hours each. So yeah. We have our ASB elections coming up. Candidates are preparing for campaign week. That's coming up. And there's a ton of competition this year, which is good to see from last year because there wasn't really any competition last year. There was like nobody running against anybody. So, but there's like, I think, but there is, I think, 11 people running for a sophomore senator position, the 5 sophomore senator positions. So yeah, there's a lot of competition. So it's exciting to see that more people are getting involved in leadership and we're building great leaders. Parking lots, the Environmental and Key Club just did a campus cleanup today, making our school cleaner, making sure it's all nice before it's eventually throwing trash everywhere again, but we'll clean it up again. We're starting to see that like decline in parking spaces available as more sophomores get their licenses. You tend to see like every year you start with a lot of parking spots, some spaces open, and then towards the end of the year it starts to get more and more filled up because sophomores are getting their licenses. Some exciting things from the Tide Hawk NJROTC program. They won the Distinguished Unit and Most Improved Unit award. I'm not super knowledgeable on what that is, but I know it's extremely cool. And 2 students from Peninsula, Davin Young was awarded a scholarship to OSU, as well as Marcus Ream was accepted to the U.S. Military Academy Preparatory School, which will then also lead into the West Point Academy. So super excited for both those kids. And yeah, spring break just finished up. Lots of fun trips, lots of fun times, and back into school now. But everybody had a good break. So, and then seniors are wrapping up their school year. Only 37 days left for the school days left for the seniors. I'm counting down the days. I know him. Lots of people have made decisions on where they're going already. You can see all the decisions if you guys want to check it out on the Instagram, Penn High Decisions 2024. And then just a couple weeks ago, we picked up all our caps and gowns and getting ready for graduation. So yeah. Yes, I have made a decision to go to UW next year. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much all that's going on at Peninsula High School.
So I'm Logan Toms, the junior rep from Gig Harbor High School, and over spring break, a kind of interesting thing that happened is a few hundred feet of fence just basically popped up around our parking lot area, which this project has been a long time coming, apparently, from asking around, and the key goals are to the key goals were to first and foremost improve security, which is a major goal of the entire district, and I would imagine that it would help prevent garbage from essentially piling up into the forest nearby, which is also great. Seniors are getting the opportunity to give a speech at graduation, and all they have to do is send their 3-minute speech in, and 3 people will be selected. Submissions are due no later than Friday, May 10th. Looking at our seniors, our senior prom will also be held at Washington State History Museum in Tacoma on June 8th, which is really exciting. Since seniors are finishing up, seniors and juniors are finishing up, our counseling team is hosting an information night to figure out next steps for post-high school planning, and that will be held on April 25th. 6 p.m. in the Gig Harbor High School auditorium. And I know Alec already mentioned it, but our Tidehawks Naval Science Program was honored with a Distinguished Unit Award with honors. Some more information on that is that the criteria for this reward included a comprehensive evaluation of participation and achievement across various components such as military drill, orienting, physical fitness, academics, and community service. Also, the little honors part at the end means that our district placed within the top 20% of over 600 different NJROTC units based on academic performance, which is also really exciting, keeping the grades up. And while Peninsula is just starting their SBA testing soon, we finished SBA testing with 2 weeks of block schedule right before spring break. I can't say the sophomores enjoyed it particularly much, but it's an important thing for the district. Now, sports are also going on right now. As Alex said, it's the middle of the season. Our boys soccer team is currently 8-3 with a game tonight against Capital, a home game, and it's their senior night. And that's where my other rep is, which is exciting. And our boys and girls golf team are both in first place in the South Sound Conference, and the boys team just finished 3rd at the prestigious Gamble Sands golf tournament in Washington. And our fast pitch team is currently 5-2 on the hunt for the league title. Our boys baseball team is 6-4 and has a home game today against North Thurston. Our girls water polo team is 6-2 in their season, and as Alex said, the Begataway Bowl for the lacrosse equivalent of fishbowl is happening 8 p.m. at Roy Anderson this Friday. So a lot of exciting stuff going on. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I hope you're well and have a great spring break. I'm Sarah from Henderson Bay. We started our new quarter on Monday, our last quarter of the year, and we have a lot of new students, but they're pretty cool, so it's great. The countdown to senior graduation has started. We only have 37 days left. That's crazy. Tomorrow our leadership class is going to Discovery Elementary to help them plant pumpkin seeds in little toilet paper rolls so that we can help plant them directly into the ground. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that we will be inviting them over in May to plant them in the ground. We are also very excited for this Saturday, which is Garden Day. It's from 9 to 12, and snacks will be provided. The week before spring break, we had a mini spirit week from Wednesday through Friday. Wednesday, we wore pink because Wednesdays you have to wear pink. Thursday was vacation day, so we all dressed like we were going on vacation for spring break. That was pretty fun. And Friday was Fancy Friday. Everyone had to wear fancy clothes. So it was pretty fun. And then the Friday before spring break was Fun Friday, where we had lots of activities such as school ride, bingo, karaoke, popcorn, and other snacks. It was a great send-off to spring break. And our Interact Club for spring break, we went to Guatemala for our service trip. We left on April 13th from Seattle at midnight, or 11:59 p.m. to be exact. And we came home on April 20th, this last Saturday, around 10 p.m. after a 2-hour delay due to thunderstorms in Texas. While we did not do as much service work as we had hoped, we did get to see the impacts of service work that it has on people. One of the days we went around with the social worker of the town, who went around to the families with injured or medical needing family members, and we got to hear their stories. Over half the population of Guatemala is below poverty, so these families did not have a lot of money, which is why the social worker was there. And so it was, so we got to hear all their stories, and it was a little, it brought tears to some of us for hearing some of their stories. We also painted one of the houses at the Olpa House, the house that is the refuge house for those of the community or their workers or students that might be in need of a home or a new environment if their family might not be in a good situation. We also got to visit with the school children at the Opal House and see what they get to do. Their school is a Montessori-based private school from kindergarten through 5th grade. We also learned a lot about the water source that they have. Lake Adelan is proven to be the world's dirtiest water. Do not drink out, do not touch it, do not drink it. It's really pretty though. And we also learned about the coffee making process and a few facts about the big coffee businesses, quite surprising, and a lot more. We stayed with the Opal House. We stayed with a couple from Seattle who had been living there for 17 years at the Opal House. One of them is a doctor, and he does all his work at a hospital for free, and the x-rays are only $6. And there was a lot of learning opportunities, and it was definitely an eye-opening experience. Our student showcase is happening on May 16th at 6 p.m. This is an open house for our students to show off their art, not just the art class kids. And a ribbon cutting will also be held for the garden project at the student showcase to show what we have done so far with our project. It is going to be great.
Good evening. My name is Amelia Scheffler, and I'm a senior at the Community Transition Program. It is great to be here again. Let me introduce some of the things we have learned. 2 weeks ago, we had a wonderful guest chef, Donna Carnahan, that taught us how to make homemade sushi, such as maki sushi rolls, anari seasoned rice into tofu skin, and bamboo sushi rolls. I asked one of my peers' opinion, and she said that she thought it tasted good. She also recommends that others should try the sushi and how to make it. I tried the sushi rolls that I made, and I absolutely did not care for it. No, since we've been talking about Dana, who shared the cooking talents with us, this brings me to the subject of our talent show. Gig Harbor High School is hosting the annual talent show. Since it has been postponed in February due to the snow. The talent show is Friday, April 26th at 11:30. Hope to see you there. We have a busy unified schedule with both soccer and track, both with 2 teams. Our first soccer game is this Saturday at Waters High School at 10 and 11. Next week, April 30th, we will be playing a soccer showcase at PHS for his varsity soccer game around 7:45. On May 2nd, we have a track meet at Gig Harbor High School. Our Unified Mod Pizza fundraiser will be on May 7th. Enjoy some pizza and help out Unified. The next subject is graduation. We will be having 7 seniors graduating this year. We have currently 5 out of 7 seniors graduating with paid jobs. So let me tell you some senior jobs. Chloe works at Postal Annex, and I just got a job at Home Watch Caregivers of Tacoma. We have a new CTP job that we just started with Backpack for Kids at Creviston Valley Farms in Long Branch every Tuesday. The farm is 40 acres and a vision for food for all. Next week we are planting hanging baskets to beautify our community. We will be having a hands-on art on May 1st, teaching us how to do water sculpture. After we complete the project, then we go to Forager and teach others the activity. It is time to start helping see the PHS and Gig Harbor High School students transition to CTP. We are going to host a barbecue on May 17th at Titlow Park, a kickball game on May 31st at Seymour Park, and a bowling competition on May 10th. We want to thank Kimball's Hands-On Detailing for our Donut Fridays. Every Friday, we walk down to Donuts and see a Gig Harbor and Peninsula ET&T program students and eat yummy donuts. Our final trimester, we have started a new schedule so that students get a chance to try out different jobs and activities. It is my last trimester. Something else we did before spring break was taking care of our school fans by washing them inside and out. We do this every year before the State Patrol inspection. Our fans are so important to the program. It's a big job, though. There is a new 810 group, ACON group starting for people who graduated to work with the Kiwanis on service projects. The goal is to have more things to do since people graduate from CTP. The first meeting is tomorrow, 7 to 8:30 at PHS Commons. Come join us, and everyone is welcome. Thank you.
So donuts better than sushi? What? You like donuts better than sushi?
I don't care for donuts that much. I'm kind of picky, so.
Outstanding. I would like to point out I received a text actually yesterday afternoon from a school board director in Shoreline who said she's actually watched a couple of our board meetings because they're looking to revamp their student rep program, and she was so impressed with you that she shared it with her board, and they've asked us now for all of our information about how we started it up and how our kids are engaged. So you are leaders in a capacity that you probably don't even know. There are people around the state who are watching what you do and trying to replicate it. So kudos to you. Excellent, excellent job, you guys. Okay, we will roll on to comments from the community this evening. I'll call you up as per standard operating procedure. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. You'll have your timer up here. We'll be cutting off right at 3 minutes. If there's something that you don't get to say, we will, or we are always accessible by email. First speaker we have this evening is Sarah Garriott.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Garriott. Over the last several years, I have heard a phrase repeated ad nauseum. Kids need to see themselves reflected in, fill in the blank, their teachers, their books, etc., in order for them to have a sense of belonging. I would like to submit that this is a false premise from which so many decisions around education are being made today. It is fundamentally flawed. I do not encourage my children to read books so they can see themselves. I encourage them to read so they can see others who are different than themselves. I encourage reading so that they have exposure to a wide variety of perspectives that are different than their own. Much of the greatest education and growth I have experienced is when I was living in cultures surrounded by people who did not look or think or sound like me. James Fishnetbeck, an investigative journalist, surveyed the library catalog of 35 of the largest public schools districts in 8 red states and 6 blue states, representing over 4,600 individual schools such as Broward County, Florida, Austin, Texas, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, where surely the conservative voices would be well represented so their students could, quote, see themselves reflected in their libraries. Instead, what he found was, quote, it isn't so much a problem of banned books, it's that kids are often exposed to only one side of the story, end quote. Much of my comments here from now on will be from this article that he wrote. He found that How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, which argues that, quote, the only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination, end quote, is stocked in 42% of the U.S. districts surveyed. Meanwhile, only a single school district, Northside Independent School District in San Antonio, Texas, offers students, quote, Woke Racism by John McWhorter, a book that challenges the borderline religious anti-racist ideas advanced by Kendi. Felix Ever After, that claims that girls who hate, quote, being forced into dresses and being given dolls, end quote, are transgender, is available in 77% of the districts surveyed. But not a single school out of nearly 5,000 searched offers books critical of trans theory like Trans by Helen Joyce or Irreversible Damage, The Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters by Abigail Schreier. Out of 35 districts, progressive thinkers were found in abundance. The Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx, 75% of districts surveyed. The 1619 Project, 54%. Stamped, 71%. The New Jim Crow, 60%. White Fragility, 54%, etc., and on and on. Equivalent conservative thinkers, Capitalism and Freedom by Milton Friedman came in as the most of any district surveyed. Only 8% of school districts held that book. Dr. Martin Luther King said, quote, people fear each other because they don't know each other, and they don't know each other because they don't communicate with each other, end quote. I hope that our district would seek the best books, books that build character, are praiseworthy and good report, and help our children get outside of themselves and broaden their horizons. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Diane Nelson.
My name is Diane Nelson. I was delighted to take one of my granddaughters to the Gig Harbor High School presentation of The Sound of Music. The outstanding performances of the singers, musicians, actors were impressive. At the final curtain call, as the cheers and applause arose from all of us, tears were streaming down my face. I was remembering in the play when Austria was about to be invaded by Hitler, and Captain von Trapp was admonished to just be quiet and go along with Berlin. He refused. He was determined to be courageous and to do the right thing to protect his children. So first, I want to thank all of you for the courage that it took at the beginning of the school year to stop the pronoun practices that were occurring in the district last year. Next, I want to acknowledge the challenging work that the board, principals, teachers, and other staff are doing to try to prevent and stop bullying. However, indoctrinating our children with false biological gender ideologies does not lead to less bullying. Instead, it may lead children suffering from gender dysphoria to transgendering. Affirming hateful lies, stunting brain growth and bone growth, and mutilating children's bodies are not compassionate things to do. I cannot remain silent as our government propagates the transgendering of minors. The United Kingdom released new research just this month that debunks gender-affirming therapy and advises a holistic treatment of gender dysphoric adolescents, which addresses the complex psychological reasons a child may think he or she was born in a wrong body. Also, a 15-year longitudinal Dutch study of 2,700 children documented that a significant majority of gender-confused children grow out of it by the time they are adults. Those are both examples of compassionate ways to treat children. Genuine compassion demands that we protect them from harm. Teaching children, if you were born a boy but think you were a girl, or if you were born a girl and think you were a boy, it's okay because gender is fluid, is leading them down a dangerous path. In conclusion, I'm asking you to be courageous and support the well-being of all children by removing the harmful, false gender ideologies being taught in the sex ed curriculum and instead replace them with the truth regarding gender confusion.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Next, we have Jen Bunch.
Superintendent Barr, School Board, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm here as a concerned parent in regards to what happened at Evergreen. I don't want these to go silent. I don't want us to forget what happened. I want us to be there as a community because I think all of us agree that student safety should always be our #1 priority. And looking at safety, we have to think outside of the box because how this happened is not acceptable, and if we don't do anything, it can happen again. So I think we need to revisit looking at cameras. And I know the school union did not like the thought of looking at cameras, but we have to know that that protects students. It's another pair of eyes in a classroom. And it also protects the teachers because sometimes it's not always the teachers that are the predators. Sometimes it's also the students. And so it's protecting both parties all the time. And also maybe allowing other people into the classroom so we don't have people one-on-one with any students, that just wouldn't happen. And that we're opening the lines of communication with the students, allowing them to know what touching is inappropriate and what they can do to report it. And so this just doesn't happen over and over again. So as you guys lay your head tonight on your pillow, I hope it's the first thought on your mind. And when you wake up tomorrow, you guys get together with solutions that can serve our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Camry Clausen.
Hello, my name is Camry Clausen, and I'm currently a sophomore at Peninsula High School. First and foremost, I would like to say that I appreciate all of the teachers, the counselors, and the administrators that I've had the pleasure of learning from. They truly care about each and every one of us. I'm very grateful for the love, time, and attention that they've given me in my short time at Peninsula. As a student, it's been very inspiring to see all of these loving parents come up and advocate for their children and other marginalized communities. I would like to lend my voice as a student to the discussion about the need for DEI and social emotional learning in our developmental years. There are very real struggles students face every single day within the halls of our schools. There is blatant homophobia, racism, and sexism. I've heard male classmates talk about how they would torture homeless people if it were legal, or how birth control is a woman's job and nothing for them to be concerned about. I hear the N-word every day. Every day. Racial and homophobic slurs ring throughout the hallways more frequently than the tolling of the bells. This kind of hate is not in our nature. Rather, it is a learned behavior. These attitudes and issues prove that we need DEI and social emotional learning so we can develop not only reading, writing, and arithmetic, but we can also build character and encourage us to lean into personal growth that can only flourish when we are empowered to see and value perspectives beyond our personal experiences. What some may call Marxist teachings, others can recognize as basic human decency, showing acceptance for all, and creating a sense of belonging. So every day, we must ask ourselves, are we willing to confront our discomfort of the unknown and step forward into progress and actively choose love, compassion, and understanding? For me, that is a yes. These racial, sexist, and homophobic issues are not going to go away after these students graduate. It will get worse if we can't acknowledge and make changes for the better. Equality and inclusion is a battle worth fighting for. In closing, I'd like to leave you with words my mother has often said. Equality is persecution to those who are used to privilege. May we all use our privilege to be better neighbors, friends, and humans.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes public comment for this evening. We are on to item 7, our consent agenda. Is there any discussion prior to the vote? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve consent agenda.
It's been moved by David and seconded by Lori to approve the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is carried. Consent agenda has been approved. Before we move on to our reports this evening, we do have, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Barr to make a couple of introductions.
I would like to call up our new CTE director. We could. Kelsey. Just, yeah, you're
Sure.
good. And then the chief of schools, Mr. Michael Farmer, would you like to come up to the podium and introduce your family?
Yes, I will.
Yeah. Bring her on up there.
All right. Is that my, yeah, it's on. Okay, good. All right, well, good evening. This is my wife, Mandy. So thanks for having us. I'm really honored to be a part of the team. We were invited to bring our children as well, but our oldest son, he's a math tutor at Mathnasium and got called into work. And then our younger son, Jace, isn't feeling well, so he stayed home, unfortunately. So thanks for having us. Like I said, I'm really excited to be part of the school district. You know, education's a really small world, right? And we know a lot of people, and there's plenty of people in the audience I've had the pleasure to come across the last 25 so years of my career. And I'm really looking forward to getting to work with some of those people. And from the looks of our students, we're well on our way to being the best school district in the state. And I'm looking forward to supporting those students, our staff, our families, and our community in that endeavor. And I'm really excited about it. And I'm just, I'm really thankful for the opportunity. So thanks. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Kelsey, would you like to come up to the podium and just, sorry, you came over here. I didn't know what to do. So I just called Mr. Farmer up. So now I'm calling you up as our new CT.
Thank you for inviting me to the podium to say hello. My name is Kelsey Park. I am currently the principal at Kopachuk Middle School, and I will be taking over the CTE director position starting July 1st. I was previously a CTE director in the University Place School District, where I was also assistant principal at Curtis High School. So I am just ecstatic to be bringing systems and thinking, and one of my favorite words of compliance, to this dreaming up what our skill centers and what our CTE programs can be for this district. So thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for inviting me to the podium.
Thank you for saying yes.
Okay, item 8.1 this evening, we have our school improvement plan progress and winter testing data for our secondary schools. So I think Dan Gregory, is he? Oh, right there. He will kick it off
back
for
here
us.
behind the podium.
Okay.
Well, thank you, President Wimberly, Board of Directors, and Superintendent Barr for having us here this evening to share the great work going on in our secondary schools. And we have pretty much almost our entire secondary administrative team here tonight. So thank you all for being here as well. We do have 2 items to address before we get into the school improvement plan updates. I want to introduce James Cantonwine. James is going to provide us with an update on the strategic plan dashboard that will be on our website. And so James is going to share with you some information about that. James?
Yes, so this is a surprise, and I'm really representing the work of our data analyst, Mason Pratz, did some fantastic work. So Tanya, if we can pull up from the district webpage, as of, I don't know, 2 hours ago, our district dashboard has now been updated. Mason's done some really clever things behind the scenes that both streamline his workflow and make things prettier, which is fantastic. If you could click on the Dibbles Overview tab, just as an example, some of the data that in our last school board meeting the elementary team was sharing, we can now look at a visual of each of our schools, fall, winter, and spring, to kind of see what does progress look like. And we don't need to go through like all of the nooks and crannies of this right now in the meeting, but at the top, you're able to filter by grade and by test to kind of see what's the specific information that any member of the public is looking for, so that we can be as transparent as possible. We do still have some ongoing plans, like explaining out what does NWF refer to. That's nonsense word fluency. But how do we get that to display in a way that's going to be accessible to folks so that they know what they're looking at, and we can still keep things fairly clean and simple. We also have, if you want to click on, I think it's 2 steps above, the Smarter Balance changes. There we go. So again, this data is really looking at last year compared to the year before, but another way for you to, anyone in the public, to be able to look at how has performance progressed over the last really 2 years. If we go back further, we get to that really kind of goofy test that wasn't quite the same thing that the state pushed on us. So really focusing on as apples to apples as we can be. So yeah, this is a surprise, but Mason got this done. We were pretty excited about it, and so it's just been live for a very short period of time. So yeah, here we go.
So if anyone's looking for this, it's on the strategic plan, academic excellence, as one of our goal areas, and then all of this there.
Yep. Yeah, so if they click on the strategic plan part of the website, the dashboard is right over there on the right.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Mason, even though he's not here. I'm waiting for Tanya to get back to our slides. Okay, secondary school improvement plans. I just want to start by saying we've been working a lot on college and the high school, and even making high school credit available at the middle level. These are not secondary students. So regardless of all that work we've been doing, the picture is obviously of our elementary kids. I did notice that when we had the slide up there. We're not that far ahead yet. But let's talk about a few things. Earlier, when Mr. Helwick shared about the elementary work, he emphasized the focus on our MTSS commitments on universal design for learning and what we call the big 3. Which are clear learning objectives, community and collaboration, and multiple methods. We've been working on those. He talked about 6-week cycles, and that's what you're going to hear about more about from our secondary principals this evening as well. And instructional walks and the AWSP building leader training. We had another one of those sessions today. Again, a very reflective, valuable training that we had. I did want to add this time around charge to schools. Our principals at the secondary level and at the elementary level got together in August, and they said, what do we want to be held accountable for, and how do we work our way towards those strategic plan goals, and what are we going to check in on periodically? And that was our charge to schools work. And for us at the secondary level, we focused on 2 of the categories. We focused on learning environment. And when they focused on learning environment, they really focused on the MTSS behavior emphasis that we've had for several years. And that is directly connected to sense of belonging. We heard the student earlier tonight talk about behaviors and how that can if they're not addressed, work against sense of belonging. And so our principals have been working really hard on that. They're going to share some of that work with you tonight. And the other three things they focused on all fit within academic excellence. And that is progress around English language arts, progress as it relates to math, and then graduation rates, of course, is the third one. In those visits that I've had with them quarterly, we focused on three questions: what, so what, and now what? And the what was about what data are we looking at? What data have we gathered over this last quarter or in this last 6-week period? The so what was, so what are our successes? Where are we doing well? And where are we not doing well, where we may have to change things? And then the now what is, what are our next steps? And so that will be a part of those words won't be up there, but that's really what their slides are going to share with you tonight as well. The what, the data, the so what, here's what we're discovering about ourselves through this data, and the now what, here's our next steps. And so that has been, those three questions have been what we've returned to each time I've gone out and met with them. They're only going to be able to go so deep in the time they have. They're going to present a brief snapshot of how long, team?
5 minutes, Dan.
5 minutes each. Thank you. You might say we've emphasized that over the last several days. So that is our goal for this evening. And James is going to come back up, and James is going to give you an overview of middle school data, some of the broader middle school data, and then we'll turn it over alphabetically. We'll go middle school by middle school. So James, did you want to come back up here and talk about that overview data? Let me get that up there for you.
So Dan made the mistake of not giving me a time limit, but I'll still keep it short. What you can see in front of you is just a high-level look at the standardized measures that we have from our middle schools. And we know that, as Dan was saying, those really specific targeted measures, those are often the most important ones. These standardized measures let us kind of look at overall health and let us track things really year to year. So in the first column there next to grade, you can see the regular attendance. Again, this is that funny one. The state really focuses on regular attendance rate, the percentage of students who attend more than 90% of the school year. So with the thought that any student who's absent 10% or more, that's a student who's chronically absent. It doesn't matter the reason why. So our regular attendance rates significantly lower than what they were at elementary. This is pretty consistent with both pre-pandemic and it's something that we see really nationwide as a struggle. The sense of belonging data, this is new. The elementary folks we're talking about, they didn't have that data yet when they presented. That's comparing this spring's panorama survey window with last year's spring window. There's a certain amount of seasonality that happens with survey responses from students, and so we want to make sure that we're comparing 2 points in time that are similar season-wise. And then we've got iReady reading and math. Keep in mind that iReady is holding students to end-of-year expectations all year long. So when we have students who are, say, the 61.2% of sixth graders who are meeting end-of-year expectations in January, we'll expect to see that number rise as the year goes on, right? That's just our opportunity to kind of see what does progress look like as of that January window. And with that, we'll let the Goodman team.
Can I ask you a question? Transition this, James. Yeah. I want to mention one more thing while you're on the data. As James is up here and we're talking about the data, what I would share with you is iReady is up there right now. We know that Smarter Balanced is our strategic plan goal that's in there. For lack of a better term, we call that autopsy data because we can't do anything about it once we get it back right then. And so what you're going to hear tonight and what you're going to see is you're going to see some iReady data, which is checked every 12 weeks. But even every 12 weeks, correct? Yep. Even every 12 weeks, it's hard to be nimble and make changes. So what you're going to hear is, hey, here's our iReady data, but we've talked about these 6-week cycles. And the idea is teacher teams looking at data every 6 weeks and answering 3 questions. What do we need to continue doing to improve our results? What do we need to add? And also, what do we need to stop doing? Based on our results. And so that's really the 6-week cycles you're going to hear about. we always like to layer that. We've got that SBA data, we've got the iReady data that helps us every 12 weeks, but we really want to boil that down to 6 weeks so we can move and adjust based on how our students are achieving. So on that note, we will bring up Mr. Roebuck.
I have a question. I brought this up at previous board meetings over the years, that in our SIP plans, the OSPI requirement for what we're supposed to review is reading, writing, math, and science, not social and emotional learning. Social emotional or sense of belonging, sense of belonging is important, but we've also had conversations over the years that these surveys are very ambiguous, and we've had conversations around how did they feel that morning when they came to school? Do they feel like they belong when they're in band, but maybe not in science? I continue to wonder, years in now, why we still don't talk about where we are with science. We have the reading, the math, but not science.
Sure. So with Washington's ESSA plan, that's submitted to Every Student Succeeds Act, so every state's required to submit an ESSA plan to the state. One of the things that they require is that all districts in the state as a whole focus on school quality and student success measures, SQSS, because we all need another acronym in our lives. So one of the things that the state really looked at was they actually wanted to have us do a survey, but they decided they didn't want to pay for it. Which is why we don't have that formal requirement. It is, and that's where the regular attendance piece comes in. That's another part that the state holds us accountable for. One of the reasons that we don't focus on science in the same way, besides the importance of ELA, is really across disciplinary literacy and making sure that students can read and write in authentic ways in all of their content areas. It kind of goes beyond the English classroom. But with science, we get that data in a standardized way once when the student is at that school level. So we get that data from 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade. Because our state doesn't belong to a multi-state consortium like we do for science, like we do with ELA and math, it's actually teachers within our state that do the scoring. That happens in late July to early August. There's some quality control checks that happen on the data, and we don't see it until September. So by the time we see it, it's too late for us to act on it. And also the way that kind of breaks down, we don't get terribly helpful domain breakdowns to figure out if we had a drop, why. We really don't get to see that. It's a very opaque process. And that's, again, the state really kind of looking at what's the minimum requirement from the federal government for science is that it's tested at least once in each grade band, and that's it. Whereas in ELA and math, we're required to test every year from 3 through 8, and then at least once in high school. So that makes science a hard thing for us to act on in a systemic, standardized way. Yeah.
So James, is there an iReady science?
There is not.
Assessment? So there isn't a product out there that we could align to our...
No, the closest thing that we could have is really like a consistent test bank of questions that we could draw from, but not in a consistent way of like how many would a student need to get correct in order to be proficient. Just that kind of test bank for teachers to potentially draw from if they were writing their own assessments.
Good evening, everybody. While they're switching over the slides, I just want to do a shout out to my son who's turning 11 tonight. So, hey. Oh, I got the control. Well, I can do here all night then. Okay. Oh, sorry. All right, sorry. Didn't start till now. Hey, so again, this is going to be a quick snapshot, and this is nothing really short of all the work that's been done in our building with our staff and students. So I'll try to be really brief. If you're looking, the clicker. All right, really quick. This is our fall data here as you're looking at it, and then you'll see the most recent as we were going through. We are actually working on ELA right now, so we're actually going to have a third data point here in the next 2 weeks, okay? The biggest piece here when you see these cross lines is really students who are 2 to 3 years below grade level. So our focus has really been as well on moving these students up. And when you think about this level of going up, we are showing growth here. We're also showing it, we're doing a stretch goal, which means that we're going past the standard year, that we're actually moving kids into like a 1 year behind or even into at grade level. So we're really proud of the work that's being done there. Here, this data point grid, 8th grade, it's the very top for ELA. You want to be in this upper quadrant. This is high growth, high performance. So we're showing high growth and high performance in our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Okay. Continuing on, some of our successes, we have 63% in the grade level or above grade level currently. Our 8th grade moved from 20% of students with 3 or more grade levels. You don't see that here, but just so you know, we moved them from 20% that had 3 or more grade levels below to 10%. So 10% of our students have moved out of that category. Additionally, we have our 7th grade went from 1% or to up, like moved up 2% of the grade level. So if you break it down, you don't see that here. That's an overall picture, but our grade levels have been showing a lot of growth there. Another success is that our co-teach model, we're doing that in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in reading and math. And I'll talk about that a little bit in our sense of belonging, but that's a full implementation of what we've been trying to do with regards to moving kids into the classroom, and that's impacting our sense of belonging as well. A tier 2 success is that we've started a Roadrunner Scholars in our advisory. And so for ELA, everybody's doing some form of reading on Thursdays across the school. So whether you're an elective, a math teacher, a science teacher, we're doing some vocabulary work. We're doing some walk-to models for reading. We're doing book groups in the library. So we are really trying to focus that work on Thursdays. And then I'll talk about this in math, but we do a similar thing in math. Some of our next steps, we do need to continue to do some of our common use of our Wicker out of our AVID strategies. So we're still continuing to look at that, trying to move that forward. Our co-teach classes are implementing small groups and weekly rotation stations for targeted support. And so what we're thinking about for our master schedule for next year is how do we take some of those co-teach classes or some of our student support classes and tie it to our advisory to extend time for that work to be done. And then use of common language, sorry, it's hard to read here. Use of common language of writing tasks. So we have in some grade, like in science, we have a race, we have a CER. They're the same concept, but they're different vocabulary terms. How can we start to align that so that kids aren't being confused with that piece there? So, all right, to math. How am I doing for time? Yeah. All right. So similar thing for math. You can see we're showing growth when it comes to overall performance of moving our kids out of the 2 and 3 grade levels and our 1 year behind, move them into more of that emphasis into grade level performance. Some of the other successes are 8th grade showing high growth and performance. Our 6th and 7th grade showing high performance in this scatter chart. I'll say it real loud. Scatter chart. And so we want to continue to move them forward, okay? Tier 2, like I was saying, our Roadrunner Scholars, we're doing in math. We're doing this again in all classrooms on Fridays. So our elective teachers, our reading teachers, they're doing a math review, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And so we're trying to kind of come back to some of those standards that we're seeing that aren't being addressed. How do we kind of reinforce that? Tier 3, we've actually invited some adults who some former professors, some math teachers, and we're actually pulling selected kids based on the iReady scores. We're working with their parents. We're having these tutors come into the library and work with these students individually to really show that growth, and that's in a Tier 3, which would be students who are 2 or 3 years behind, okay? Next steps, we are continue to use of common formative assessments. We continue to have the curriculum and the assessments. How do we really kind of hone in on the standards that need to be addressed? And also the use of SBA interim assessments. You can look at really specific domains that can be addressed. We've done it a couple times. We want to implement that more next year. And then Team PLC work around data cycles. So again, that 6-week cycle process of coming back to it, talking about those standards, and then how do we address it from there. I'm at 5, come on, all right. I'll be quick. Sense of belonging, we have sense of belonging. No, We're in the second year for the Door Plus One More, so we're having teachers out in the hallways, meeting with kids. It's been a really switch in culture environment for us. MTS building-wide expectations. We've been doing reviews, actually having like every teacher doing a lesson every class period with regards to that. We did a survey with that, and we found that after we were doing a lot of work around phones, thank you, and AirPods, one of the things our students told us was we're having a lot of language, and so that's been our focus since February break. We've been doing school-wide tournaments, avid school-wide strategies across. We've been using planners across. All our students are using our planners, and that's been around like focusing on daily learning targets or reflection, MTSS student recognition through Pride Awards, and implementation of general wellness or generation wellness. So we're actually doing more of that work that's been kind of across the district. We had 5 teachers that went, and they're actually implementing that and kind of teaching our other teachers. Next steps, we want to increase our student voice, which has been something that we've been trying to work on this year. Generation wellness implemented throughout the building, character strong school-wide plan, and we've actually just started, we purchased Tier 2 character strong curriculum, and we would like to implement that more. So that's me in a nutshell.
Got to put my old man glasses on. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I'd like to introduce Scott Yingley, my faithful teammate, and Jamie Linker, one of our outstanding counselors. They're here to help us with our presentation, and we're looking forward to spending the next 20 minutes with you guys. Yep. So I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about our progress in our ELA, and then Scott's going to talk about math, and Jamie will talk about the learning environment. Right now, 63% of our students are scoring on or above grade level, like James had talked about, and we've been focusing on informational text and vocabulary, and our entire language arts department has been working with word roots, and it's been fascinating to see how that work has gone across the grade levels and across content areas, and kids being able to break down words because of the work that they're doing in their language arts classes. We've seen an increase of 5% in all students with vocabulary, and our largest increase has been with our 8th graders. And then for informational text, we've seen across the board a 5% increase for all students, and then our 6th grade showed the greatest gain with 10% for informational text. We're real pleased with that. We were able to offer 2 after-school reading tutoring sessions this year. 100% of those students showed tremendous growth through those after-school programs, and we're very thankful for that and the work that Ginger Tannenberg did. Ginger also led a book study with the language at the speed of sight, and that's about the science of reading, something she's very passionate about, and we had a number of staff members take advantage of that. So it's been a really great thing that we've had in our building. As far as next steps go, we just want to continue to focus on the growth rate for all students and kind of building a sense of urgency with this assessment. We're actually doing the reading assessment tomorrow, but really helping kids to understand the reason why we're doing this assessment, why we're doing these assessments, and the information, how it's used, and then how it helps to determine their path and future course offerings. We want to provide more opportunities for tiers 2 and 3 in the day support without losing electives, and that's something that we're working as far as our master schedule goes now. We're just in the beginning of that work, but wanting to make sure that we're providing the support, but we also want kids to be able to take advantage of the electives and not have to give up something along the way. And our commitment from the Language Arts Department to administer the IABs, we started that work last year, and we're looking forward to implementing it even more next year. We have some coming up in the next 2 weeks, and then we'll be doing that as well next year because we see the possibilities there that will be great for our students. We'll continue root word work next year. We've kind of found the sweet spot with how much we're doing. We're doing it every 2 weeks now instead of every week. And next year, our 8th graders will focus on SAT type words. And then we're going to move back. We're looking at moving back to our prime times being leveled with interventions for students because I think we kind of overcorrected and we're losing some students that need some specific reading help, and with the way that we have our win time structured. So I probably already took over your time. I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Scott?
It's fine. Brian told me I'm a theater major and I can't talk more than 1 minute, so I'm going to try as best as possible here. So thank you so much for allowing us to be here today. Just here to talk to you about the wonderful things that our math department and our math teachers and students are doing at Harbor Ridge. The math department's focused on numbers and operations this year with 7% growth from all students in numbers and operations. Our sixth graders showed their greatest gain at 12%. We were really happy with that. Overall, 5% growth in students scoring on or above grade level. And then something that I find really exciting that I've been able to, just get, this is new to me, and so I've been able to talk with our math teachers about and then witness it, and I know that some administrators witnessed it when they came in to do the walkthroughs, is they are implementing the building thinking classrooms and those strategies of defronting the classrooms, student using the vertical whiteboards, and then using the low floor, high ceiling questions, which basically just it varies difficulty levels and just allows the students into deeper exploration of math, but just being able to see our students and their level of engagement increase with those strategies. It's been really cool to watch and really, really cool to be able to go and just watch our kids work together and then work alongside our teachers, not just sit and get. And then also down there on the bottom, our teachers, one in particular, was able to meet with our high school math teachers with our goal of being able to align vertically, which is exciting. Next steps is just to continue to implement building thinking classroom strategies while reflecting and then refining the school and classroom needs. The math department is considering and working on a school math-wide focus project for all students. Some math team discussion around this topic has generated just the possible topics such as fractions or order of operations, and then also wanting to meet with the elementary school teachers again to hopefully try to increase that vertical alignment. Thank you. I know that wasn't a minute. Jamie, you're up.
Hi. Just want to celebrate that this is the highest sense of belonging that we've had to date, so super excited about that. Once a month we meet as a team and we used to talk about students of concern, and we've kind of shifted that narrative to be students of successes, and so we wanted to acknowledge our kids that are doing well, sort of the kids who kind of get lost under the radar, who are internalizing things but are doing the right thing. So celebrating those students. We have 74% of our students engaged in like choir, bands, clubs, arts, sports, things like that. So we're super excited about that. The numbers keep coming up because track season is upon us and we're starting a drama program. So we've continued to work on the 6-week cycles, focusing on an SEL standard each section, each 6 weeks. And so our next steps would be to make sure that those are aligned with Character Strong and with Habits of Mind, that we honor kids every trimester or every quarter next year to acknowledge that they are doing great things. And we're using video announcements to hopefully reteach and remind and reward. And we're super excited, I'm super excited about Generation Wellness and how we can use that building-wide approach to improve our classroom environment, our learning environments. That's it.
4 minutes and 59 seconds.
I just want to do a quick comment, shout out. The root words is very cool. That I just seeing my daughter and how the I don't know how to explain it other than she's becoming a little bit of a know-it-all, which is cool. It's all right. But the way that translates, and David, I think your question about science, that's probably where I've seen it the most is as they're really focusing on a lot of these root words. And when you see that when you get into like higher level science and it's come up in some discussions around aviation in our house. It's really cool. So I don't know where that came from, but thank you. It's working.
What she means is you're amazing. I bet. Hey, thank you so much for having us again. I love the format again of starting out with the goals and then coming back to it and again looking at, even though we're looking at winter data, kind of taking that dipstick and saying, hey, where are we at? What do we need to shift? And Dan mentioned the word nimble. That's one thing that's been really helpful about the 6-week cycles and looking at where are we at? What do we need to adjust? What should we ditch? And maybe what should we, make a priority? So for ELA at Key Peninsula, one of the things we're excited about and one of the successes was we had growth at all grade levels with really high growth at the 6th and 8th grade level. The way that kind of the data speaks to this is at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, 20% of our students already made their yearly stretch grow goal. So essentially what that means is in the winter, they've already hit their stretch growth goal that, again, a stretch growth goal is already a stretch. So they've hit that at winter. When we have students that are 2 or more grade levels behind, we really need to focus on getting 1.5 to 2 years of progress to get them caught up. So having that percentage of students that have already reached their stretch growth goal at winter was exciting. We had 8% decrease in students that are 2 or more grade levels below, and as Ty mentioned, again, moving kids along that continuum. We've really focused on helping creating opportunities for students to look at their data and create goals to incentivize taking the test seriously and actually celebrating whether you're at standard or not. If you make, if you've reached your stretch growth goal in winter, let's freak out about that a little bit. So we're again excited about the intentionality that students are having in creating their goals. We also again implemented this year the co-teach model within our ELA and math classes, supporting identified students, getting them in the gen ed classroom, exposed to grade level content and standards, with again a special education teacher in that class to support students with IEPs. We increased 12% up to 70% now of our students with IEPs that are in the gen ed classroom. And again, not just in the gen ed classroom, but getting support as well in that co-teach model. We're also, again, using comprehensive and focused IABs. I'd say more so on the focused end. The focused IABs, interim assessment blocks, really help you hone in on specific targets, and those allow the teachers to identify from iReady where are those holes at, and then again create intervention and instruction to fill those holes. And then the IABs kind of give us the results on, okay, where did we end up? How are students doing in terms of their growth? Next steps, again, we want to, we did bring in part of that nimble piece as we were seeing students struggle in reading. We brought in a reading interventionist leveraging our title funds. They're doing push-in support for identified students in the ELA classrooms with a focus on vocabulary. And again, we want to continue the use of the focused IABs in instruction and then really work toward classroom common formative assessments within our ELA team so that we really have a clear idea in these 6-week cycles as to where students are at, how they're growing, and what their needs are moving forward. For math, our math, again, successes, we had 8% that increased from 1 grade level below to on or above grade level. We saw a high growth percentage at the 8th grade level. That was the highest. That showed 13% of our students that already made their yearly annual stretch growth goal. We, again, part of that nimbleness, 2 cycles ago, we noticed that even though we had workshop Wednesdays, which was something our math team developed and had implemented to kind of differentiate instruction and intervention for kids based on classroom assessments, we noticed that there are prerequisite skills, especially in math, that become a barrier to students showing their mastery at grade level standards. So again, you might be able to know how to solve an equation, a 7th grade standard, but if you can't add, subtract, multiply, and divide rational numbers, you can't show that you actually know the standard at grade level. So our team did a great job of looking at the data and saying, okay, let's shift and adjust how we're doing workshop Wednesdays. They spent some time actually building modules in Schoology that are tied to specific standards and really targeted. And so as they looked at the iReady data in winter, they've implemented now the interventions on Wednesdays, and those are student specific specific, so they can look at the specific student and go, hey, this student needs support in adding rational numbers, or this student needs help with integers or fractions or what have you. Next steps, we also have sorry, Dan. We still have 2 or 3 modules left to build. And as Scott mentioned, thank you for going through the building thinking classrooms. He already hit all that. So we have our math team, and thanks to the work Chaya did, the Math TOSA last year, doing the building thinking classrooms and implementing that. And it is pretty cool to watch. I was a math teacher and so is my wife. And it's the most engaging math instruction I've seen. All right, learning environment. One of our successes here, again, is our Tier 2 academic, behavioral, and SEL interventions that are working with identified students. Our student success team meets every other week. You can see success coach there on the bottom. Mandy Swainston's done an amazing job. We use our KPMS playbook to look at specific students' attendance, behavioral, and academic data, and use our intervention grid to identify what students need Tier 2 level intervention. We implement that, we progress monitor, and then we make an adjustment. Oh, sorry, there we go. My bad. And again, it's really helpful as we progress monitor, because some of our students are showing progress. And if they're not, we kind of decide, hey, do we need to adjust the intervention, or do we need a Tier 3 level intervention for that student? Student roundtables are something that we've implemented this year. When we talk about student voice, I always say adults are pretty good about making things up that we think are cool for kids and help that sense of belonging, but sometimes we are way off. So I've led these with students, different groups of students too, not just students that are in ASB or leadership, but again, asking the questions about what makes you feel like you belong. What are the things that we can implement and develop as strategies here at KPMS to move that work along. One of the things that has come up as we implemented our PBIS reward system, we beefed it up big time this year. We have our Cougar Pride Ticket store. Favorite item right now is front of the lunch line pass, along with early honor time. So again, students have been incentivized to show the characteristics that are in our Pride Matrix: perseverance, responsibility, integrity, dignity, and excellence. And again, I'd say next step on that is really getting our whole team aligned on really recognizing students every single day and reminding each other to do that so that, again, our students continue expected behavior and feel seen and supported. We've again done trimester award recognition assemblies where we recognize all of the students participating in sports and clubs, awarding students specific awards connected to that Pride Matrix I just mentioned. We've increased numbers across the board in terms of participations in clubs and sports, and have added a couple of clubs this year. And then again, you can see the sense of belonging data there. We also do a monthly formative belonging survey, just 4 questions. And again, that kind of helps us be more nimble. That data has shown us that every single month we're between 42 and 49% of students that feel like they belong quite a bit or completely. Again, our next steps, increasing the level of Tier 1 strategies, really helping our team align around our staff commitments, seeing kids, connecting with kids. The 4 at the door is something we've implemented this year too that we want to expand on. And then again, continue building on and capturing student voice, specifically around the work of equity, diversity, and inclusion. The last piece there for next steps, as we look at that formative belonging survey data, that really helps our counseling and student success team identify student needs and can get down to the individual. And so again, they're working with small groups of students around specific topics, but we want to increase the number of those small groups that we offer and are meeting with, meeting with throughout the year. That's it. Thank you.
That's it. I got the podium. Start the clock. Is that right? Okay. All right. here I am at the podium again. Thank you for having us here tonight. Again, like Luke said, I really enjoy the ability to say in this new format, what were our goals at the start and where are we coming back to? So I'm not going to talk about everything that we're doing in Kopachuk. I'm really going to talk about what our focus areas were based on our SIP plan data. So in literacy, our goal was to increase students' English language arts proficiency rates from 72% to 81% as measured by the upcoming spring SBA. At the tier 1 level, so you heard Ty talk about this too, I want to make sure it's clear. Tier 1 is all students. So at the tier 1 level, we are really focused on our common formative assessments across teams that were given more frequently. It depended on where the pacing calendars were at. Some of our teams are working through common formative assessments within their department on a 6-week basis. Our math team is about 2-week, 14-day, 10-day cycles. So we are really focused on having a cycle that informs our instruction and our data really regularly within our team so we can start to talk about what instructional shifts we have to make regularly to inform the success of our students. You're going to hear me talk a little bit more about the math when I get to the math slide. At the tier 2 level, though, which is that yellow and that red area, we really focused on some intentional, systemic approach to academic intervention. This year, we used a new intervention model which served an overall amount of 77 students across ELA and math. We based those student selections on their test scores from SBA as well as their iReady diagnostic scores, their class grades, and their attendance rates. Our MDT team, which has been amazing, includes our counselors, Mark Hildebrand, Andrea Grafmiller, and our school psychologists, Katie Pansky and Nate Hudak, my amazing assistant principal over there. We would meet every 4 to 6 weeks to review data as a small group team. We would also get teacher input from grade level discussions that we scheduled during our CW time to inform those student selections. So based on these intervention groups, we held these during PAC. We kind of tweaked our model as the year went along. We were able to host a total of 4 rounds of intervention. In ELA specifically, we served 35 students, where only 1 student was served in all 4 rounds. So we looked at the need of the students and adjusted each round. By winter, we saw 54% of the students were making progress toward exceeding their typical growth, and 25% of the students had raised already out of that red or yellow into the green level. So we saw that as a highly effective system that we built in place to serve students in ELA intervention. We also implemented the Seeing Stars in a reading intervention program. Seeing Stars is a district-provided program developing symbol imagery, the ability to visualize sounds and letters and words, as a basis for orthographic awareness, phonemic awareness, word attack and word recognition, spelling and contextual reading fluency, and is proven effective in supporting students with dyslexia. Our MDT identified 8 students for this focused intervention. This group met 2 times weekly prior to this winter diagnostic. And by winter, these students collectively made 208% growth, and 1 student made 553% improvement on their iReady reading. Based on these phenomenal results and the work of one of our paras, Don Harris, who is trained by the district to implement this curriculum, we've increased the amount of time that students are spending in that program to 4 times a week, and we are just ecstatic to see what happens on this spring's ELA iReady for them. What's my time? Oh, okay, good, 3:45. So in math, our goal was to increase math proficiency rate from 59% to 73%. By winter, we were at 61% proficiency in math. The math team took on that new curriculum adoption this year, and as they've kind of unpacked that, they've aligned as a PLC their common formative assessments. They started the year with the concept of 6-week cycles, and as I said, they've kind of moved down to the 2-week cycles of intervention. They've also spent time with James Cantonwine in a day PD to kind of unpack the iReady standards mastery assessments rather than the SBA IABs. And as well as the comprehension checks. So our teachers were embedding those iReady tools into their current instruction to be able to get quicker data with students that also align to the iReady. We also focused on Tier 2 academic support for math. We served a total of 56 7th and 8th grade students. We targeted 7th and 8th grade because we had the highest number of those in our yellow and our reds. Our MDT used the same process to identify those students, and we saw that 62% of those students were making progress toward exceeding their typical growth, and 59% of those students raised from 3 or more grade levels below to 1 or more grade level or below or less by winter time. So our math team and interventionists overwhelmingly are advocating for this following year to include math intervention during PAC for all 3 grade levels based on the success that they saw with being able to utilize standard mastery and that small group instruction and intervention. For learning environment, our goal was to increase students' sense of belonging from 46% to 64%. So you heard James talk about the seasonality that we see as a pattern that happens in here. Overall, we started the year up at 59% and have finished at, or marked at the springtime at 57%. Our focus this year was on the 4 at the door, which we implemented in August. We know that when that's implemented with fidelity, there's a potential of an increase of 25% of increase of sense of belonging. That's why we chose that research-based strategy to really focus on. Our BLT set CFA cycle SMART goals to monitor as a BLT to track our progress towards sense of belonging as well as implementing our academic goals. We were confident coming in. We also did, Luke, thank you for the dipstick checks. We also did quarterly dipsticks to be able to see. Regularly, we scored between 62 and 70% on our dipsticks when we did those. So we had a really good idea of where we were going to end up. As part of our Tier 2 intervention, again, we were really systemic in identifying students that needed social emotional supports. We invested in the Character Strong Tier 2 curriculum at the start of this year and served a total of 59 students, which was 12% of our student population, through small groups in teaching specific skills on coping around internalizing behaviors, regulation, which is externalizing behaviors, relationships and relationship skills. We were able to start our 3rd round of those groups of students and saw 75% of the students that participated in those groups show a major increase in being able to identify and demonstrate targeted skills based on CFAs for those social emotional groups. So what was the value of that was that our counseling team actually had CFA cycles that they were doing together with our students to be able to educate them on their social emotional skills. We also, in response to some discipline data that we saw coming through in November with our BLT, developed a diversity, equity, belonging, and inclusion group that was created, that also created a Tier 1 lesson that was developed for our PAC lessons. In those small groups, we called them DEIB, we defined what discrimination and hate speech was, and each activity took time to identify examples of those, explain the impacts of discrimination and hate speech on individuals and communities with the success criteria defined as, I can use neutral or inclusive language and behavior, regardless of those around me. Our teacher, Leilani Blackburn, partnered with Gig Harbor High School's BSU and utilized resources from Becky Maffei, our lead counselor in the district, to work with roughly about 20 students in the small group Tier 2, where 100% of the students met that criteria. We're going to be starting our final group of DEIB in June. Each PAC also created classroom policies around inclusive language and behaviors and is going to be presenting these to our ASB and BLT in the start of May. And these education programs are leading the start of our student panel that will be focused on hearing from students closest to the pain, where the identity and our focus should come from on resolving those conflicts. Thank you.
All right, high school data. So again, we have that look at regular attendance, the percentage of students who throughout first semester were attending more than 90% of their, and in this case I should clarify too that compared to elementary, we're really looking at who showed up that day. This is looking at students who attended 90% of their or more of their classes. So if they're missing certain parts of the day, that's going to add up to eventually whole day absences. The sense of belonging data is there. I should also point out that the way the Panorama reporting tool works, a student who gives the middle response, the somewhat, I somewhat feel like I matter, that's a student who's counted as not feeling like they matter. And the reason for that is that if we're going to make a mistake, we'd want to make a mistake on thinking there was a bigger problem and digging into it more rather than think everything is fine and move on. And then the last metric, again, because we don't have those standardized achievement measures for high school, and we've talked about why that is, partly that they don't exist, but the passed all classes first semester for 9th grade in particular, the 9th grade on track rate is a great predictor for us about future graduation rate for that class, because any student who is off track in terms of Core 24, that's a student that we're going to need to look at waivers, look at competency credits, look at credit recovery programs. The students who are going along and passing their classes, these are students that we can be pretty confident are going to graduate on time. And we're going to progress through, just like we did with middle school, our high schools in alphabetical order.
Oops, went too far. Good evening. Thank you for having us. I'm here with Ashley Stolhan, assistant principal. Assistant principal Mary Kate Grant is at a soccer game. I do not have the score. 0-0. Really? Soccer? Come on. Okay, sorry. Want to emphasize a few things for you on this one. You're going to see this is actually a mixture, this chart, of both our 9th grade on track and some of our work around the ELA portion at Gig Harbor High School. So our 9th grade on track grade this time was our best ever, 94% at semester. And so we're super excited about that. We credit that with very intentional looking at what is going to get our kids across the finish line. And so it's the Tier 1 supports, and Kelsey and Nate and Luke and everybody talked about their Tier 1 supports. But there are some other things that we did that we think actually had a greater impact on that. So we implemented a dead week right before finals. And during that dead week was basically an opportunity for students to both study for finals and also to do retakes on any areas of proficiency that they needed in order to complete the course, in order to pass the course on time. So that, I think, was really targeted. We also had conferences during that time where teachers could conference with individual students to see what they needed in order to get across the finish line. So those were really targeted interventions, and I have to shout out our counselors, our assistant principals, and our teachers for really working with students individually and doing whatever they could to help them to pass their classes at semester. We have weekly SST meetings, which are support meetings around students so that we could target and support students who needed additional support with our success coach. And those meetings include our counselors, our administration, our security officers, because they know a lot of things, our nurses, and our success coach. So it involves, it's really this whole wraparound service that we do for students so we can identify the needs of where students are, so we can make sure they're able to pass their classes, and then early Tier 2 interventions. So those are all the successes on the side of 9th grade on track. I'm going to move over to the literacy side of things. I know we keep calling it English language arts, but it's really literacy. So I know James mentioned interdisciplinary literacy. It's this idea of reading and writing across all content areas. And so we focus both in the reading side of it. In the ELA, you can see a focus on Zinc and Lexile placement scores. So we did pre-assessments in the fall of where students were in terms of their early success, and then measured them on IABs through the semester. And so we could move the needle on that. And then I'm thinking about my time. And then on content area literacy, this was really a focus on literacy in each content area. And what you see up there, which is really small, do you have a slideshow in front of you as well? Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, so it's really small, but what you see up there is a form that our teachers filled out. And what it is you'll see on the left-hand side, it's the goal that they had. And this is actually social studies data. So this is literacy in social studies, and their focus was on primary sources. because we know that when our students go to take the SBA or the PSAT or the SAT, it might be coming back, sorry, James, and all of those things, we know that they need to be able to read primary sources, to be able to identify language from the 1800s, et cetera. So they really focused on the primary source piece of it. And that was their data, and you can see growth on that when this gets shared with you later on. So that real explicit vocabulary instruction, graphs, models, common formative assessments, and things like that. Our next steps are just to continue doing that, continue with the instructional strategies, and focusing on how can we continue to move the needle on our literacy. And now Ashley's going to talk about math. Sorry, it's so small.
Yes. Oh, no, you're good. I love math. So when you look up at this slide, I'm just going to do this. Up here, you have an example of something that the science team has been working on. And so that's what these two white boxes are. And essentially what you have is they broke down and said, we need to explicitly teach graphing because that is a literacy skill in math that's used in science. And so they went through, and as they taught that content, then they said, where are our students at? And when we don't need to assess, or when it doesn't fit in the biology unit to work on graphing, we're not going to assess it there. But we're going to keep going through the entire year, making sure that students are seeing this in a cycle, in a spiral, so that over and over and over, we're building on what they're learning in their math classes. So that's kind of the white boxes. Our successes in this have really come down to a lot of explicit vocabulary. Our math team saw a gap between Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 and said, we need to address that. So we're going to address it by being very direct and very explicit in our instruction to make sure that kids know what we're talking about, that they understand the language of math as they're going through the unit. IABs are something that you've heard lots and lots about. We've been doing those. They're very exciting. Early results on our last IAB were wonderful. We saw that students scored 61%. A side note on this, just to be aware of, is the fact that that was a specific smaller chunk of the SBA. It's not all of the SBA. The teacher said, we're going to assess on what we've taught, not on things that we haven't covered yet. It's very logical. I appreciate about that. Our next steps, we're going to keep focusing on IABs and that data. And our math team is working together on common formative assessments, which you've heard a lot about. They also have 2 release days coming up in May where they're going to be diving in and saying, how do we really intentionally plan for next year to make sure that we're taking the data, we're taking the learnings from this year, and we're building everything out in advance. And so that's really exciting work. As one of James's favorite studies is reduce change, increase improvement. And so what we want to do is go into the year with a really solid plan using the data from this year for the fall.
And what I think is just so exciting about this is I know we keep talking about these 6-week cycles, and we do have to shout out James because this is a part of really where he is pushing us forward in the district. But this is exactly why we do what we do here. It's this graph, right? It's this that says, okay, these were the 3 areas we know that our kids need to focus on with graphs. So we gave them this pre-assessment, and then we didn't assess here because we saw a greater need here. We adjusted our instruction. And then we down here we got 93%. We didn't need to. Our kids were getting this, but we took a dip here in December. I blame the holiday, but we went from 93 to 55 in this one. So they explicitly went back, 41, we have to reteach, now they're at 94 again. So it's this constant cycle of improvement, which allows us to change our instruction daily, weekly, monthly, to really move the needle on student achievement, Okay, learning environment. We are at 32%. Which is where we have been for a little bit here, and but there are some things that we have been excited about doing this year. So we have revamped our school culture, and specifically around our lunchtime. And so we have different things. You want to explain a little bit about what we do at lunches now?
Yeah, we're experimenting with looking at lunches as kind of a cultural hinge for the school. If you think about what lunchtime was like in high school, I don't know what it was like for you guys. It's a time that some students love and some students dread. And so we're looking at how do we make sure that all students feel really welcome at lunch. And so that's things like our athletic director, Blair Sook, having the gym open and having 100 ninth grade boys playing basketball. And they're very excited. It's things like having music regularly at lunchtime. Surprisingly, kids really liked it when Hank Williams came on. It was great. Yeah. And we're looking to expand that with more art, with more like lawn games and activities, but just really bringing in opportunities for students to connect with each other on campus.
And just to add to that, we had our first ever March Madness this year, and that was super fun. So throughout the teams signed up, and we had brackets, and we may have played around a little bit, the admin team, and then tapped in our coaches to play against a team. But it was super fun and just really brought a sense of community to our whole school building. So that was great. We roll out a piano. Or guitars, and students just come and play, and it's just been super great to see like the talent that just exists, and kids all gather around and they love it. So and then this year we started our unified sports, so that was another really great opportunity to build community. At our last pep assembly, we had the opportunity, because they were undefeated in basketball, the whole school got to cheer them on as they held their trophy, and it was just a really great time for all of us. And then just continued clubs and all those other things. I can't be past. No, I'm not past. I promise. Luke was 9:58. I saw it. And then I'm done. Thank you. That's all.
Brian, you're up. No one knows what 5 minutes is. So. Oh, yeah. Okay. It's not going to happen. Let's see. Where am I? I need a clicker. Okay. First, I didn't do a whole lot around the ninth grade on track. 2/3 of our ninth graders started with us after the first quarter. So that number doesn't, I don't think, reflect where we're at. We're probably about 60 or 70% on track, still low, but it's not that low. In terms of ELA, we did iReady in the fall, and based on those scores, we had a focus on vocabulary. Let me back up. We were about 60% of our kids were 3 grades or more behind in ELA. So we went to basics. We're going to focus on vocabulary. We're going to focus on some basic reading comprehension strategies across curricular areas. Michelle said it. It's not just your ELA classes, it's literacy across the board. So we try to get all of our classes involved. Now I'm going. Try to get all of our classes involved. I think I turned it off. With reading strategies in every class regularly, focus on academic vocabulary every week in every class. We had some modest results with the vocabulary, increasing to 36% at or above grade level. We want to get more than that. We also use a tool called Zinc. Zinc is from Springboard. I was hoping to get some better data so I could share exactly where we're at with that. We use that in our ELA classes. Students are showing growth. Our biggest challenge with this and with math is attendance. If kids aren't there, it's tough to learn. We did, at the start of the year, we were looking at doing a co-taught ELA class, and we decided we can't do it. With our 4-period model, it was like, we can't figure out how to do it. We got towards this semester, and my special ed teacher came to me and said, we got to do it. So we found a way to create a co-taught ELA for our 9th and 10th grade classes, full inclusion for ELA in our 9th and 10th grade. We didn't think we were going to be able to do that. It's been really successful. To me, the best part is watching the teachers working together and seeing how they're supporting students. One of our next steps is finding better ways to support them. They don't have a common planning time. That is a key part of a co-taught model. We didn't have it at the start of the year, so looking ahead, that's what one of the things that we want to do. We also want to refocus on that all-school reading work. We started really well. As we got along, it kind of tapered off. So we're going to get back towards that. Next, math. Math is a struggle. 80% of our students, based on iReady. Sorry, I only got 2 hands. 80% of our students
were 3 or more grade levels behind in math. So again, going back to basic skills, basic strategies. At the winter, we went from 80% 3 grades or more to 65% 3 grades or more. That's a pretty good bump. It's not where we want to be. We're focusing on numbers and operations. I think Luke talked about this as well. So our teachers, at least 2 times a week, are focusing on, outside of the algebra or the geometry, just those basic skills, right? It's hard to do the algebra or the geometry if you can't do the basic math work. So they're really focusing on that work. PEMDAS, right? You guys remember? There you go. Working with just multiplication, division, addition, subtraction, exponents, decimals, fractions, those things. So next steps, working with the interim assessments that was brought up before. One is just a way for students to see what the SBA looks like, right, and practice with the computer, but also to focus in on some of those tighter standards. We're also looking for some different tools for how to support kids. When you have kids who are in an algebra class who are of such a wide skill level, how can we support them so that they're all getting attention at the grade level that they need? So we're looking at a tool called IXL to maybe replace iReady, has a diagnostic, and then builds in some programming specific to the student. We have a math lab that we need to rethink how we do. We weren't very systematic in how we assign kids. There's too many other conflicts during that time. So instead of getting kids to the math lab, they're doing some other things. So that's an area of growth that we want to get to with that. What am I missing? And like I said, attendance is a big challenge for us. We've done some, this year we have a great attendance team. We're making the phone calls, we're sending the letters, we're going on home visits, knocking on doors, using our other district tools, it's a challenge, right? Get your kids to school. If you live out on the KP and you miss the bus at 6:20, it's a challenge to get you to school. But we're not opposed to going to picking up kids. So learning environment. We had some good growth there, and I'd love to say, oh yeah, we were really, we just let our kids be kids. We have some awesome students. I think the key that we try to do is give students ownership, celebrate what they're doing. When kids come to Henderson Bay, they oftentimes haven't had the opportunity to be leaders in other schools, and they emerge with us. And I think Sarah's a great example of that. So we're just trying to find ways to celebrate what they do. The Bay on Display coming up in May is a school-wide showcase. We're going to highlight every single student in our building in one way or another, through their art, through their schoolwork, through their other talents. It's pretty cool to watch what they're doing. We've got the garden project going. I've been wanting this for a long time, and thanks to students like Sarah, it's actually going. Saturday, we have our big kickoff. Oh, I'm good. See, I'm good, people. So that is happening. We have some clubs that are coming. The PI, which is People for Inclusivity, the SEL Club. We're doing lots of things to celebrate what our kids do. We started the year teaching expectations, being clear about those expectations, and then having students get together and say, what are our expectations of each other? Each advisory created norms. They brought it to the full school. They brought it back to our leadership class. They brought back full school commitments that our students live by. So I'll just say this, talk about ownership and celebration. Had a student who said, let me make sure I get it right. Henderson Bay is a place where you can be recognized for who you are, not who people think you are. I think that's why that number's there. How did I do?
You did okay.
I did okay. Okay.
Okay-ish.
Thank you. Am I going the wrong way? You are. All right, thank you. I'd like to introduce, I'm Mike Benoit, principal of Peninsula High School, Mark Nichols, assistant principal, and Danielle O'Leary, and we're going to do our best to wrap this up quickly. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark to go through the English language arts, and I'll cover the math, and Danielle will cover learning environment.
All right, and we were only given 4 minutes, so when we were rehearsing this, I don't know where you guys got 5. But at any rate, yeah, let's get to the English. There we go. With our working towards our SIP goal, getting to share some of those successes that we had, one of those big successes, and tighter than I've ever seen, is the cross-disciplinary support and collaboration towards that SIP goal. It's been really tightly aligned from, our social studies department was tying their TPEP student growth goals to our SIP plan. So it's not something that's been shouldered specifically by our ELL team. It's our whole team, our science team, our world language team. So that's been a really fantastic thing to see just within our own building with staff. Super consistent use of the resources available to us to help dial into our SBA progress, consistent use of the interim block assessments. We had over 1,100 IABs administered over that time. So, and we've already done our ELA test. So we did that about a month ago. And as you can see, we had 95% of our student body complete that test, which at this time of year is fantastic. I'm really thrilled with that number because we still have time to keep dialing in and getting more and more of those students. With our 6-week cycles have helped us to also be really dialed in, and they've all been tied specifically to strands of the SBA. And so, as you can see in this example here, this is looking at textual support and evidence and being able to make inferences from text. It's doing what a bar graph, what you wanted to see it do, right? I mean, as it's going on, the number of students who are meeting below standards over time is consistently going down, making way for more and more of those students meeting and exceeding the standard. Another example of just what we've been tracking, and in terms of that on track, monthly, we've been taking a look and working with improving this number and dialing down to 10 students that are currently off track. But that's a number you can work with. You can really get dialed in on those students and figure out what are those barriers and how can we help remove those. So within the 6-week cycles, and that's really been able to help collaboration. And there's some really kind of cool opportunities for collaboration cross-district too, as we're also in an adoption cycle, and some of those curriculum seem to lean themselves pretty well with those 6-week cycles, and so that would be a really cool opportunity that we're excited about.
You want to switch the slide? Thank you. Just a couple examples, again, for math, just really consistent use. I think we got off track during COVID and thing of really using the intern-based assessment, and they weren't quite as valuable because the SBA had really changed. Staff have really dug into that this year, and so as well as English language arts, there's a lot of that happening in math. And our geometry team came together after some of the initial assessments and said, there's some big holes in some of our algebra skills, and they really need to be solid in algebra and geometry to pass the SBA. So they developed these 11 checkpoints that they thought as a team were real good indicators of how successful kids would be on the Smarter Balanced Assessments, which starts this Thursday. And this is just an example of some of the data from one of the classrooms on one of the checkpoints. So they have several versions of an assessment for the checkpoint, and this one's on linear equations. And every Wednesday, the geometry classes are working on moving kids through all 11 of these checkpoints. And you can see how this group of kids has progressed from November to the end of March through this particular checkpoint. Another success piece is our co-taught class. We have 2 geometry and 1 algebra co-taught class, which is an expansion from last year where we only had 2. Thankfully, we have the same teachers able to do it, so they learned a lot last year, first time working together, and are able to expand that support this year. On the left, or on the right, you'll see, just like we had for language arts, every month we're looking at on track. We're looking at grades, we're pulling grades. And so this goes through the end of February. When you start a new semester, it's not that valuable to pull grades, 4 or 5 weeks in yet, because there are not enough grades in there in some areas. But James had said, I've heard him say a couple times, one of the biggest predictors of high school graduation rates is 8th grade math scores. So we're really looking closely how are our kids doing in algebra. And we had success, 328 students passing, their math credit as a 9th grader. We have, 28 at the end of the semester who were already a half credit behind because they failed the first semester. We pulled all that data and looked at them. There was one of those 28 that passed in 8th grade. And so they're coming in the door. I'm not saying that's a middle school issue. So, in fact, I wanted to compliment you guys because you guys all did a really great job. It just means that we have some gaps. We have some holes, and we need to find creative ways to support these kids. And co-taught is one of the things we're doing. We have weekly student support team meetings and weekly counseling meetings to sit around the table and peel the onion back deeper and get to know these kids better and try and figure out ways we can support them. So, but we're being very intentional about looking at the data and learning more and more about these students and using all the resources we have to support them.
Guys, it's the last slide. Yay. All right, so we're going to end with our SEL and our learning environment at Peninsula High School. You can see our sense of belonging data, and I have to be honest, because we're honest, it's a little bit discouraging to sometimes see data like this. We know it drops in the spring, but we feel like we work really hard on trying to make sure students belong. But it's just kind of a reminder on the questions that we ask. How do you feel like you belong in school? And you really can see there's kids, 8% say do not belong at all. And so that's disheartening data, and we want to figure out, who are those kids and how do we make them feel like they belong at Peninsula High School. And one of the big things we try to do is engagement. When kids are engaged in school, they belong, right? We might not belong in a specific space, but they'll find their place. Ross Wilkins has been here a couple times talking about our amazing athletic numbers. We want students on the fields and the pools doing all the things. Also outstanding is we have 248 students engaged in performing arts. So whether that's band, drama, choir, that is such a safe, inclusive community. And if you walk into the auditorium, that's a fabulous place to spend your time. We also have 35 clubs and activities. And we actually did a survey. We have 684 students at Peninsula High School participating in something other than clubs or other than sports and performing arts. So those are clubs. Those are honor society, sewing club, people of color club, GSA, whatever it may be, they're involved. So we were really excited about that number. Of course, Unified has just been amazing. Amelia discussed that tonight. We have 95 students participating in Unified sports, and then adding in that cheer and track and esports this year has been a great addition. Additionally, our EDI group, we built in an equity, diversity, inclusion group into our homeroom. So these students are hand selected. They chose to be in this group. They meet weekly with our EDI BLT lead and work on efforts to make the school a safer, welcoming environment for our more marginalized community. As you know, it's lovely Camry shared tonight. We're not perfect. We have work to do, and we want to hear student voice and create space for that student voice within the school day, because those students are busy too, doing other things after school. So finding that time. Also, just a super active leadership group. We have 3 full leadership classes. Right now, they're working on a legacy project and trying to figure out how do you leave Peninsula a better place than when you came. Some really cool efforts there. Next steps in focus is safety. When we looked at the panorama data, our safety numbers dropped. Students are not feeling safe all the time. And so we're going to leverage Brent there, doing more small group work and trying to understand, what are those moments that maybe don't feel safe? Is it the building? Is it the people? And really looking at that data. So safety is really important, and we know that continues to be. With that, that's it. Thank you.
So thank you. We may not have hit the mark on our timing that we were aiming for, but I would just like to call your attention to two things that I think I heard throughout, that I've heard when I've met with folks. And the first one I would say is intentionality. Just the intentionality by which our building administrators are doing their work and the teachers are doing their work. And the second thing I would highlight that you heard frequently was student voice. Luke talked about it with the roundtables. Ty did a survey. They're really going out and getting student voice as administrators through different ways to try to increase that belonging. So intentionality and student voice are really things that I've been most proud of this group and their work. With that being said, questions for them, or myself, or James. James went to the back of the room there, but he may have to come back up.
Yeah, mine is simple. Thank you all. I know it's a lot of work, and I appreciate you all coming forward and laying it all out there. It doesn't look pretty for some of it. Avid. Somebody mentioned Avid. A couple people did. Do we have Avid in every one of the middle schools? No.
We currently have Avid in 3 of the middle schools. Middle school principals had a meeting earlier this year with several of us, and we were talking about how to best leverage that resource and if we were going to go forward leveraging that resource or not. So they made some building level decisions. I think that's something that we can return to at a later meeting if you want to get more information on that.
Okay. Well, next question.
I'll be quick. Thank you all very much. That a short time, even though cumulatively it's a long time, but it's a lot of work and effort. So I appreciate you all coming and sharing and being candid, even in areas where it may not be areas we want to focus on. I think by doing that, that's the only way we're going to get better. I was just wondering, you can probably answer this, Dan. Can you sort of clarify it's unclear to me. Can you distinguish when we talk about IABs and CFAs and all of these? Basically, what are those and how are they the same and how are they different and who makes them up? Where do they come from?
I'm going to have James answer most of that. I will say that we were using even some different acronyms from building to building. So the one thing I asked them to do is, hey, let's get on the same page and use the same acronym. So James can talk more specifically about the IABs and the CFAs. I think a principal would be good to address those.
Can I use apples as an analogy?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I was sitting back there thinking this question's going to come up. So we're going to think about them as apples, right? So any of these measures that we want to use that are not comprehensive of everything in math, they're just something that's targeted on part of math. These are all going to be examples of common formative assessments. So these are going to be apples as a category. Within apples, we've got specific categories like the Cosmic Crisp versus the Honey Crisp. Right? And which one do you like more? If you look on the internet, there's substitutes for each other. I know that because I looked at what are substitutes for Cosmic Crisp apples just a second ago. So they both work in different recipes, and yet we might have a preference for one over the other. They're not exactly the same. That's how we can kind of distinguish between, Kelsey referenced the iReady Standards Mastery Assessments and the Smarter Balance Interim, the IABs, the Interim Assessment Blocks. So they're different varieties of the same thing. They address the same points. They're just going to be a little bit different, and some people have a preference for one over the other. If you're a student, they're both fruit. right? They're going to be a pretty similar experience, but the way that we encounter them and deal with them might be a little bit different. The focused IABs, which are an even narrower set from the state, these are perhaps more like buying your apples pre-diced. Right, that might be good in some circumstances. In other cases, you want the whole apple to work with, and you don't want it to be pre-diced. But again, it's still an apple. Does that help? Okay.
I guess sort of, but I was also hearing these. I guess my question is, are they coming from the state? Are they coming from within? And are they aligned to what we're ultimately measuring? And how do you know?
Yeah, so the IABs are coming from the Smarter Balanced Consortium. So it's kind of funny, the balanced part of the Smarter Balanced assessment is that when our state kind of bought into that consortium, they were buying both a summative year-end test and they were buying interim assessments that were aligned to that, and they were buying some teacher resources that are kind of that like hidden gem that people don't want because they don't want to think about going to the state testing site in order to get teaching resources. But that's, again, part of that balanced part. The smarter part is that it's an adaptive test. And although we have lots of adaptive tests now, when Smarter Balanced first came out, that was a very new thing to have. The iReady pieces are coming from Curriculum Associates as the vendor. Those are, again, tied to Common Core, this tied to the same set of standards. They're just coming from a slightly different place.
And when you heard CFAs, CFAs are for the most part being put together by our teacher teams. Even if they're using the iReady piece, at least those teacher teams are pulling out the pieces that they want. The CFAs are more related to those 6-week cycles, those pieces where we want to be nimble and look at data more frequently so we can adjust. IABs do give students an exposure to the prompt type that they're going to see because they are directly connected to that consortium.
Okay, so the IAB and the CFA are different in terms of, not obviously they're different, but I mean, I guess.
Can I answer?
Yes. Yeah, go
I think I know where you're going with this. So a CFA, a common formative assessment, can be an assessment that your teacher team gets together. They've all agreed we're going to do these math standards. We're going to give this assessment on this day, and then we're going to come back and we're going to look at this common assessment. It usually comes from the curriculum or something maybe they've created. It can even be an assignment in some ways. Then they come back, they look at the data, and they go, how did our students do? How did they do? What did we do when we taught this? How did they do? And then they adjust their instructional strategies so it's much more frequent on the CFAs, and that's what your PLCs are working on. The interims, PS, I know, more acronyms. I was literally at dinner tonight and said we need to give you guys a cheat sheet. Did I not? They can attest. I'm like, should I just print something out for them? So yes, and then the interims are like unit bigger tests that are based specifically on the SBA so that we can prep for that.
So Michelle, can I just bump in? So could you do a CFA like in a science class?
Oh, yeah.
Or in, I don't know, Spanish class?
You should have a CFA in every class.
Okay.
So
can you do an
that's
IAB in every class?
Yes. No, actually, no, you can't. You can only do that for ELA and math.
Thank
Thank you.
Yes.
No,
Right
only
answer.
ELA and math.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. So that's why the common formative assessment, especially when we get to the secondary, this is just the piece where, and to the point of like we have the SBA all the way through 8th grade, but then we get this one point in high school on the SBA in 10th grade, and it's like, oh, we're supposed to do something with that. So the CFAs become really our like our bread and butter. And Kelsey's done a tremendous job this year with CFAs and her team, and the results are super positive for that. So shout out to COPA for that. Did that help?
Yeah, that helped a lot. I think where I was trying to end up with it is there a way, I think you alluded to, or James mentioned, when you get familiarity, exposure to the prompts on the test, because, you know, that's the thing about in high school, it seems like you get away from when you're in elementary, you get tested more.
Yeah.
And then you get into high school and there's more of a fragmentation, and then all of a sudden you're rounded back up and given an SBA, and it's like, whoa, what am I looking at?
And that's the help. That's the nice thing about the interims, because now you're familiar. It's like the PSAT, right? Why do we give the PSAT? Because it helps kids understand what the SAT is going to look like, and they're seeing all those prompts, and they're seeing the way it's different, and they're preparing themselves for it. That's why who was it? They had Schoology. Was that PHS? They had SBA Schoology. Mark. Yeah, I
can speak to that. So we actually had a fantastic English teacher, Kim Marinelli. She went in and created a Schoology course called We Slay the SBA Every Day. And on that, she took all of the question stems from each of the strands, and she just categorized them. And so that's what allowed our multiple departments to be able to pull those assessments and develop SBA-like assessments, questioning in those familiar ways in each of those disciplines. And so that's one way they can be used, that we're not using specifically the IAB because it's a static test. It's not going to be it's the same test every time you do it. So you couldn't try to measure that over time to see people improving. That'd just be test familiarity. But you can use the style and build those into other discipline. So that's what we've been working with. Yeah.
They did. They built their own Khan Academy for the SBA. Nice job. I'm just grabbing my things. I don't want to.
So Dan, I have a couple question areas, but I'm going to start just with SEL. I mean, not SEL, ELA.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so around reading literacy, let's just say literacy, what are our, when we identify kids that are below grade level or below standard, or kids that might need tier 2 and tier 3 supports, what are we doing as far as, do we leave the kids in the class that need tier 2 and tier 3 supports for literacy? Or are we bringing a teacher in to help them, or are we pulling them out? I saw a note in there that said we don't want to lose an elective for kids that need tier 3, 2 and 3. What are we doing around that?
So I'm going to turn it over to any of my principals to come up and talk about that. But generally they all should continue with tier 1, and it should not be an or. It's an and. So I'll let Kelsey address that.
So we want to make sure that similar to any type of content information that we're giving students, we're giving all students the same access to information. The shift to co-teaching was because research is showing us that inclusive model of keeping students with their gen ed peers and access to that information is one of the layers that we're building in tier 2 support at a tier 1 level, if that makes sense. And then at COPA and in other buildings, we are looking at how do we build in additional time to fill some of those gaps. So one of the intervention models that works well in research-based practices, I guess you'd say, is that pre-teaching model. So for our tier 2, we are utilizing pack time, and you heard Brian reference potentially going back to being more inclusive in that pack period time for intervention to pre-teach or to kind of fill holes. And then when students have a tier 3 level, typically we would be looking at potentially if they might need more one-on-one support or even an IEP or 504 to meet some different needs on what their levels of support are. But those students that are receiving tier 3 supports are also receiving tier 2 supports and tier 1 supports. So we're layering on, we're not giving one or the other. It's kind of like taking the plate and adding dessert to the plate, and then your salad goes with it smushed into the one buffet line, if that makes sense. Yeah. Yep. So for our students, for one of the tier 2 interventions for our students, and this was specifically in response to dyslexia needs that our students have, we, in that PAC period, took students, and it was only 8 students because we know in small group instruction, that's where it's most effective. We also really honed in on students that were between the K and 3rd grade level on their iReady. So 7th and 8th grade students who were reading at a kindergarten, 1st or 2nd or 3rd grade grade level. So we really provided targeted instruction for them 4 days a week. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 30 minutes each of those days. That is their pack period. And they have English in potentially a co-taught English class, or they might have additional accommodations or services. But the Seeing Stars program is really specific instruction for students where they're writing and spelling in the air, working through sentence stems, really learning vocabulary, processing through how to put letters into words and how to make context clues out of those words.
Okay. And I don't, English learners, if they're in a class and they're struggling to read, because our goal is 100% reading by third grade, do they have a unique person that comes in the class to help them so they stay with their peers? So let me finish, because sometimes I'm all over the place. Does an English learner have someone unique in the class helping them? And if there's someone that needs tier 2 and tier 3 sport, is there an additional person in the class working with them? So are there groups of people in there?
It kind of depends. Yeah. So our ML team, Jamie Croft and Gabby Fink have come into our buildings. I think almost all of us have done trainings with them to talk about strategies that teachers can use within the tier 1 classroom to serve students. So peer pairing, intentional pairing is one of those strategies where that support our ML students. We also have Inessa Rossin at the secondary level who comes in and supports our ML students with some pull-out instruction specifically as well. It also depends on the need of the students. So some of our ML students are really great with verbal processing, but they can't read the English language, right? But they can understand it and comprehend it. So it really depends on the individual student. And so we meet that need of that individual student at all of the levels that they're demonstrating the need at. Does that make sense? Okay.
And then last ELA question is, I've been recently traveling around the state, and I've been able to talk to teachers around the state and around EL. Obviously, some teachers that are not in English or literacy subjects, they don't have to do all this testing. One of the things I heard, and you can tell me if there's any truth to it, is that maybe one of the reasons that we're statewide suffering in reading and writing so much is that teachers are spending too much time testing and not enough time actually doing instruction. And so that there's test, lots of tests. Like, I know you have certain tests that are mandatory. What kind of tests do we have that are discretionary that take away instruction time that could maybe be helping us read better?
I think there's multiple layers in this. I think the first part is when we heard Michelle kind of talk about common formative assessments. So assessments aren't always a test. Formative assessments can be like, on your way out, I need you to put a sticky note on that wall. That is an assessment that we're using as educators to inform our instruction. So I'd say that when we're thinking of a formal summative or a formal test, that is not happening as frequently as it sounds like you've been told, but we are regularly, especially as a former choir teacher, like hearing students singing, I'm assessing the way that they sound, the way that's the type of assessment that teachers are doing all the time in their classrooms. And so what we're really talking about is how to quantify what they're seeing and hearing and doing in their classrooms to make instructional decisions that best yield high results with students. I don't know if there's any. Ashley wants to say something as well.
Sorry, used to be the facilitator for English. The key thing with English to remember is that the standards meet not just the reading, but also the writing and the speaking and presenting. And so in that, you're going to see times in a class where students are focusing on the reading and the analysis, but also times where they're focusing on that production. And so that production, just like what Kelsey mentioned, might be something that's assessed in a way that students don't even know it's being assessed. They're having a discussion and the teacher's listening in to go, who do I need to follow up with? Who do I need to pull aside and say, hey, let's talk a little bit more. Were you understanding the content? But it might be more formal. And so I would just say, just a little note that the standards in English, even though we often think about the reading and the writing, they also include all of the presenting, all of the research, all of the analysis, all of the critical thinking. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Just a couple of comments, actually. Thanks all for coming. And I just wanted to comment that I love the intentionality and the creativity with which you all and your staffs, your teams are attacking this data, and really just, it seems like just reviewing regularly, you know, and trying to tweak, like, what could we do differently? And I just saw that across the board at every group, and I love that. That's the idea, you know, and so that's awesome. I mean, this comes up all the time, but you can't help but remind yourself when you look at numbers that are startling, like when I looked at some 9th grade numbers, and you have to remind yourself, even though this is not an excuse, it just is the world we live in, but this grade was in 5th grade when they left school in person. And so they, in the very transitional, very formative, just the whole idea of doing one class at a time, those years were all very different for this group. And every grade has a story, but so that's good to remember. And lastly, just I wanted to make a comment about Henderson, because you know, that's a place where you may see sometimes some low scores on belonging, and like in 9th grade maybe. But that is a building where every single time I've been in that building, the thing that I'm struck with the most is an incredible sense of school spirit, of pride in being a part of Henderson, and I think even more noteworthy, peer support. And I think the kids, any event I've ever been to there, the kids are very supportive of each other. And so whatever you got going on there, it's working. So thank you for that.
You're next.
More?
Aren't you next?
Okay. Chuck, did you have more?
Oh, no, I do. So first, I agree totally with what Lori said. I get the same sense when I'm in Henderson Bay. But I've been watching in my 11th year on the school board. I've been seeing these healthy youth surveys and the panorama, all this stuff. And I've said before, I'd like to just see those surveys all go away because of the same results year over year over year. Is it possible for us to reimagine what we're going to do as far as determining sense of belonging? Because we beat this up over the years ad nauseum, that it depends on what side of the bed did the kid get up off of, or did they get in a car accident, or they get in an argument with their parents before they came to school, or are they just making it up? Is it really, you know, hey, I'm just going to screw with the survey, I'm not really going to answer this? And I'm just saying, is there something we can do? I think we had this question before, James, that like last year, was it possible for us to detail down a little bit deeper so a student might have a better, and I'd like to actually ask our 2 students, because you had to take it, and I'm just, because I want to make sure I'm, you know, being thoughtful about it, is if we had this question before, does someone feel like they belong when they're in band or in choir or in track or whatever? But if we're just having this overarching sense of belonging, I feel like I belong in school, I just wonder if it's a way for us to go down a little bit more, that they feel partly during the day, maybe they dread lunch or whatever, but does that make up for the whole answer?
So I'm gonna hand it to James to talk about Panorama and the other tools out there. But what I would say is the work that you heard about this evening, the roundtables, the student surveys. Hey, what rules are you guys understanding? You heard Ty say, and you heard the students say it earlier. Ty said our students came back in our survey and, hey, we understand cell phone use. We understand we're not supposed to do that. But can you do something about the language? Those are the kind of things that building administrators, building leadership teams, and teachers can respond to in the moment so that they can start to shift their culture day by day, week by week. The Panorama survey, somewhat like SBA, is done periodically. It's actually done more like an iReady. But that's why I really like the student voice piece that was emphasized tonight. Whether it's a survey, whether it's a roundtable, how do we go out to our students and say, how do we make your experience better? And the more we do that, the more we can adjust in the moment instead of waiting for those pieces of data.
I just want to make it clear. I'm just saying we've seen the same for the same
right.
So many years. How many percentage have thought about suicide, or how many kids do this or do this or this? And that's why after James, I'd really like to know what our high schoolers think about these surveys. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
So we can measure belonging in lots of different ways, and there's nothing tying us to any particular measure. So I'll throw that out there first. The advantage to going with something like Panorama, and there are other vendors that do similar surveys, the advantage to going with them is that we're then able to see how are our students responding compared to other students in other districts. So if we start kind of, adding in our own questions, that can be really useful, and we can learn really valuable things, and we absolutely do, especially when we pull focus groups together, right? But if we're trying to see, so we know that certain students, particularly in high school, are going to pick the somewhat answer. They're going to pick the middle response, right? Well, how many of our kids are doing that relative to kids further down the highway? Right, that's something that we can get when we use a Panorama. Using that, we see that kind of everybody's sense of belonging scores are down from where they were pre-pandemic. An important point for us to note is that ours didn't drop. They were already there. So our students were already giving different responses to those questions than students elsewhere in the country. And I think that's an important point for us to consider, is that maybe we have a reason why we think that is, and we can dig into that more. But we know from using that standardized tool that our students are giving a little different responses than their peers elsewhere.
Okay. Yeah. What do you think?
What's your question?
No, I just wanted to know, you got to take that survey, right? Did you answer it 100% truthful? What do you think it? What I'm saying is, I take back that question. What I'm saying is that how much how much value to put into that? Like, is it based off, were you in a bad mood, or you got to take the test. Just
is the question, was it clear to you that they were getting at belonging?
Yeah, I think it is clear that they're targeting belonging. Kind of asking about like my personal view on the Panorama survey, I find it very formulaic, and I guess since it's such a broad survey with so many people, entire school the entire schools, like school district, it feels like very indirect to any like changes, I guess I would say. So it's like, it may be good when comparing like our district to others, but like from like an actual day-to-day impact on students, it feels like it'd be very difficult to drive like unique change from that. And that's why I think we should be focusing more on like focus groups or like specific input that like teachers are getting from students and whatnot. So just more specific stuff when it comes to belonging.
Thanks.
The surveys are a little intimidating, only because it's just another survey that most students feel like they have to do. But knowing that it's an important survey, I've actually kind of grown to like the surveys, mostly because actually the last one we took, it seemed like it was a bit shorter than it used to be. But it was an important survey, and our school's a pretty good school, so it's kind of not that intimidating if you think about it. But we also know that the somewhat button is bad, so which is why we kind of thought that the answers go down, because sometimes you really don't know if you're sometimes you really don't know, or you're just like, well, what if it's like kind of this but kind of not? So if you click the somewhat, you think it's a safe answer, but it's not. That the middle answer is not neutral, so it actually goes more to the negative side.
So you're saying it counts negative when you click.
Yeah. So we've kind of laid. So now we know that, so we kind of either go more for the lower or the higher end, unless we like really don't know.
Okay.
But
because you're skilled at taking the survey.
Yeah.
The answer is C.
Yeah. But I also, for me, I kind of, sometimes the answer depends on what I'm feeling that day, but also most of the answers is kind of just like, I end up we usually think overall, so it kind of, yeah. But I think they are a good, they're kind of important, because otherwise you don't always know what things are, and it's not like you can just like sit people down and be like, so what do you think about your school? So yeah.
I do like the focus groups better. I think that's a better option.
James, could I suggest, so we have multiple data sets. We have the state of play data that just came out that we haven't shared. Healthy youth survey, that's done on a biannual, right? Every other year?
Yes, biannual.
Right. And so my curiosity might be, working with the administrators and working with the student voice team of what else could we do? Because I know that many school districts are not using Panorama due to the cost. It is costly. So if we're not moving the needle after year, then what could we do in order to change what I heard pretty eloquently from both of the students, which I hate to put you on the spot, first of all, about something like this, because you are two voices and you actually represent a lot of kids. But I'm curious about some thinking around administrators going back to your students and saying, what else could we do? Because if what we continue to do is not moving a needle, and the needle is not moving, and we're spending all this time on the data, which may or may not be, indicative of school culture, then we should probably do something different.
Yeah, and I think focusing too much on the Panorama survey is the same problem that we would get if we focused exclusively on the Smarter Balanced assessments, right? That we need to look at what's something smaller, just like we do with ELA and math. We're trying to focus on smaller increments of change in order to get something much bigger to shift. And yeah, I think we should absolutely bring some folks together and look at what are some of those other measures that we have. They're telling us in a lot of cases common things, and in some cases they're a little different. But then what else is that we're missing? And I think particularly getting student voice on what we could be collecting and really focusing on would be great.
I'll say I don't feel bad about asking them at all, because we're elected to represent tons of people, and you are elected to represent your student bodies of your schools. And yes, you're here right now, but I appreciate your student voice, because I appreciate your honest answer. And if you go back and look at, I'm referencing my history on the board, and you go back and look at all those surveys, they've almost looked exactly the same year after every other year. They almost look exactly the same. So, and the reason I say that is I hear these our principals and our staff and our teachers in all the grade levels, and they're so engaged and excited, and they're doing all this great work, and yet the surveys don't seem to reflect the great work that they're doing. And I just want to make sure that we're properly assessing the feelings of our kids. That's all. And that's why I bring it up. Yeah. So I have one last question. Sorry. Social emotional learning. I know this is a state thing. And I went and reviewed all the state stuff around social emotional learning. The first blush, it almost looks like emotional intelligence. Like we've all done emotional intelligence stuff. There's a little bit more to it than emotional intelligence. I won't go into that. But there's a lot, okay? So you got the teachers that have to do the class and all the other stuff and teach. Who's grading or assessing each individual student's progress along all those 6 areas of social emotional learning that they're required to come up with over the course of so who's monitoring that to make sure they're hitting those marks?
Yeah, so the state's social emotional learning standards are one of those sets of state standards that we don't report out in a really consistent way. Same thing with educational technology standards or the computer science standards that we have K-12, and we don't necessarily report out on them in real specific ways. In elementary, we see those called out as kind of the character citizenship, work habits part of the of the report card. And then in secondary, we tend to shift away from that a little bit because focusing too much on the citizenship part of the class tends to get in the way of actually assessing student mastery of the content. If we are looking at, again, kind of going back to the like surveys, one of the ways that we measure for an individual student, their, say, self-efficacy, do they feel like they can do the work, is through surveys. And we don't use the word self-efficacy. We say, you know, how much do you feel like you can complete the hardest work in your classes? And in that case, a student who says, I feel somewhat confident, we might be pretty happy with that in a way that we're not happy with a student who feels somewhat safe at school. That's a student who doesn't feel safe, right? So I would say those SEL standards, in terms of like kind of the big six the state pushes, those are not ones that get assessed with a real consistent basis across K-12.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, go ahead.
One last thing.
Interesting
And
answer.
maybe I missed this, maybe you mentioned it, that a lot of the middle answer is considered negative. What's the percentage of people that check the middle answer?
One of the schools
Yeah.
had it on there.
So it's going to vary question by question, but it's most often going to be, I'll use our math term, it's most often going to be the mode response. So the more students are going to respond somewhat than respond with something else, with a few important exceptions, like, do you feel safe at school? That's not, somewhat is not the most frequent response, right? We see something that's more positive than that. But in general, at secondary in particular, you'll see more students respond somewhat. And there's some you know, kind of discussion and thinking through that school teams need to do about, are we okay with somewhat on this question? And in some cases we might be, and in some cases we might not be.
But is that accurate if that's our go-to answer? Because they want to have the safe answer. They don't want to go one side or the other.
Sure.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I say, you know, to Sarah's point, you know, about, you know, if I know that that's a negative, I'm either going to go one or the other, right? I might go lower, I might go higher or something like that. Or you're right, it might just be a safe answer for them. But we have treated it as though that's not good enough.
Yeah.
Right? That needs to go.
And we can, again, kind of a part of the reason for using a partner like Panorama, at least when we were first getting going with measuring social emotional learning in this way, is to really kind of get a sense of what's out there and why are some of these things done in this way. So National Science Foundation several years ago commissioned actually the development of most of the questions that are used in Panorama. They're the same questions that are used in all sorts of surveys. And one of the reasons they included that middle response is that's where most of your students who are going to give a different response because today is Tuesday than they would give tomorrow on Wednesday, that's the answer they're going to give. So it's a way for us to kind of hold those out, and it makes us be much more confident that these students, that's really where they're at. And these students, that's really where they're at right now. These students here in the middle, we don't really know where they're at. And maybe that's, again, maybe that's not okay depending on the question, but we can be much more confident in these students truly do have kind of a negative feeling about their belonging at school. These students really do have a positive sense of that.
Thank you.
Sarah or Logan, do you have any questions about anything that you've seen? Questions, comments?
Just cut like improper data from these Panorama surveys, like for instance if someone spent like 2 minutes answering 50 questions or something like that?
Yes, that's why principals don't have access to the data right after you take the survey, is because there is a series of different data quality checks that happen with that. So one of them is looking at students that responded way too quickly. Like you said, in some cases, a student is going to see essentially the same question, but with the options flipped. And if they're going to, just give the bottom response, then we know that wasn't real. That's the same process is done on, say, the Healthy Youth Survey, as a way to figure out which of those students do we maybe need to throw out their responses.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So.
That gives a hint to how I respond.
You didn't have to do it.
Just wondering about someone else in class.
Mic drop. That's perfect. Nice. Anything else from students? Okay.
I appreciate the secondary. Thank you so much. And I don't think one of you hit your 5 minutes, so you all did not meet standard in that. But I did want to just highlight really the combined efforts at the middle school and the high school. It is very evident that you are doing things together as a team. I know that you have been visiting each other. I know that your teachers are working together. Nothing like having an adoption to bring people together. That has been hopefully very transparent and ongoing, so that is pretty wonderful. You know, we still have challenges in mathematics, so I'm going to bring it back to the academics now for the conversation. The support and the resources that your staff have, really building thinking classrooms in mathematics, you know, mathematical talk, the practices around mathematics, that has not been a focus yet since I have been here, and I just want to tell you that that will be a practice as we go forward, to really give support and professional and development training with and for secondary mathematics, as well as the work. I just have to applaud the work around literacy and really, you know, seeing stars in middle school and high school teachers. I've said this time and time again. I was a science teacher, and I did not understand how to teach students to read really complex text in AP biology, and probably needed some assistance around that. And so the work that you were doing in literacy in secondary is really, really commendable. And I would say not a common practice throughout secondary schools in America, really. So thank you for the effort. Thank you for the hard work. And really, thank you for your entire team being here. I just want to highlight that. The assistant principals, your counselors, I mean, you have other staff here. It's late, and you still have to come back to school tomorrow. So I just want to really highlight, this is really a great team, and I'm really, really proud of the work. The metrics and the data are what they are. And so I appreciate you not shying away from that, and know that we will only go forward. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. I will say we have a little bit more to go tonight, but secondary team, you are dismissed if you would like to go. Thank you.
Good job, you guys.
Thank you. We have no old business to discuss this evening, but we do have a budget update.
There we go. Okay. You got it? I got it. Thank you. Okay, because I like a little bit of healthy competition, I am setting a stopwatch, and I'm going to do this in 5 minutes or less. So, okay, first slide. We've all seen this before. One of the things we're looking at are those semicircles. I'm making sure that we're tracking to be on par with budget. We knew we were going to be seeing just over a $2 million reduction in state revenues. We'll see most of that during the months of July and August. So right now we're still trending directly on budget. Slide 2. Our expenditures here, the most important piece is our green semicircle. We want to ensure that we're meeting board goal of at least 4 to 6%. Right now, we're tracking at 6.18% for an ending fund balance as of the end of this year, so just over board goal. That is a perfect place to be, especially given the fact that we took a fairly significant state revenue hit due to decreased enrollment, but we've been able to sort of slide with those punches and decrease our overall expenditures in order to absorb those losses. What we're looking at here is where we're trending to be at by year end. Those two boxes with numbers on your far right hand side, one of them is where we're budgeted to be, the other one is where we're trending to be. The line is exactly where we need it to be. We monitor this extremely actively every single pay run to ensure that our incoming revenues and our expenditures are exactly where they're expected to be. One, so we don't bust budget capacity, and two, so that we can meet our board goal for ending fund balance. Here we start getting into more specifics in regards to our spending trends, both prior year to actual and current year. Right now, overall, where we're spending is where we targeted to spend. We have spent approximately $2.2 million more than what we have received in revenues. We knew this was going to happen. We're spending down fund balance. That's what was budgeted for. Ultimately, we're tracking exactly where we expected to be at this point. This is another way of looking at the data in a different detailed format. We're looking at what's coming in for both our local tax, state revenues. If you look at the top red and you see all those negatives, state general apportionment, state special purpose, all those negatives are due to the decrease in enrollment. So our net difference is just over $2 million reduction in revenue. That's because our federal revenues have increased at this point just by over $1 million due to the free meals that are being served in 2 of our elementary schools. And I'll have more information during the next board meeting in regards to that program expanding into other schools going into next year. And then the very last one, and look at that, it's only 2 minutes and 46 seconds so far, is a detailed projection of exactly where we are by program for our different gen ed or our general education funds for both revenues and expenditures. So it shows areas where we are not tracking to bring in as many revenues as we had anticipated, one of those areas being in supplies, goods, and services. You bring in 2 schools with free meals. Great, you're getting more money in from the feds, but you're bringing less money in from the community because they're no longer paying for meals. You're going to see a natural reduction on that side. For the expenditures, one of the things that we're looking for, that very bottom line where you see that positive 228,000, that means our net number, we're currently spending less than anticipated per budget as of this date, with about $228,000 of a over in excess of what we would have budgeted to spend at this point in this year. So that's positive. Seeing black under your expenses and seeing red under your revenues, you want to see those balance out as you go. But we did budget to spend down fund balance, and so we are doing that. But overall, everything's going according to budget and plan, and we've rolled with reductions. And this is for month ending in March. April is levy property tax collection month. So you're going to see revenues spike in April. That's the state pays us the least amount in May, so you'll see our revenues drop significantly in the month of May as we have to pay out more from fund balance to make up for the difference. That's 4 minutes and 35 seconds, and I am done. Any questions?
Well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could I ask you to talk a little bit more about line item 3100, the apportionment? No,
Yes. Oh, David, I was getting ready to turn it back on.
I do have a question around, there was a thing in the enrollment, like our 8th grade attendance is at 66%. Is there an actual area, if that dips low enough, that we stop receiving funds for enrollment for 8th grade?
That is it's a complicated question. The answer is yes and no. So what would happen, I know, sorry you guys, what would happen is if a student didn't attend for 20 consecutive days, then yes, we're no longer getting paid for that student. Let's say they attended on the 21st date, now we count them again. Then they don't attend for 20 days, now we don't count them. So you can have that cyclical reporting of that enrollment where you get some revenue one month and then you don't get revenue for them for the next month. But it's not meant to be that way.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Oh, go ahead.
Two really quick questions. So on the first slide, why is the actual year to date much higher than projected? Is that the food service that you were talking about?
That's exactly right. So for the federal revenues, so our federal revenues, when there was a legislative bill passed last year that brought in free meals to elementary schools that were over a specific poverty percentage for that building, and we get supplemental money from both the federal government and the state government for participating in those programs. It's a requirement to participate, but we do. And so that supplemental money coming in, it was all negotiated last minute at both the state and feds, so there was no way to truly budget for what we were going to be bringing in, as well as the participation level at the building level. So we budgeted conservatively, because that's what we do. If we get a surplus of revenue, awesome. We expand and build the program based upon that. So right now, that's why you see it trending so much higher, that is basically food service revenue coming in. And Creston and I have been meeting with Sodexo and really partnering and talking about how do we continue to expand our food service program, providing more options, higher quality ingredients, locally sourced, with these revenues that are coming in from these programs.
Cool. And my second quick question, just more generally. So I know, one of your main goals is transparency in the finance of the school.
Of course.
Do you have a specific time frame when the levy spending plan will be released? Because I notice it's not out yet.
So the levy spending plan so we have two different levy spending plans. We have the safety, security, technology levy spending plan, and we do have that one. The levy spending plan for 24-25 is currently in development and is currently being worked through right now through this process. If you're talking about the 23-24, like this year, are you saying that it's not on the website?
I'm the technology and security, and I think
we
both.
have it.
Okay.
Yeah, we have it. So we just need to get that posted to the link on the website. So, and we have it out for 3 years right now, I believe, or gone out for 3 years. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we can get that posted, but we have it. Perfect. Anything else? I know, seriously. There we go. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, next up is superintendent's report.
I think I'm going to be very brief and just say it was a great night. I appreciate the questions. I appreciate the administrators, and we have so many things to be proud of. The programs that we have that are being nationally recognized and recognized by the state, as well as, just having our students here. They are just a representation of our amazing schools. So I just, I'm going to stop there and let everyone be done before 9.
Well, we still have board comments.
We still have.
Well.
In an executive session.
So, thank you. All right, board discussion, maybe we'll start with Lori.
Yes, I also will just not say anything except for I would just encourage the two of you we're just about to the time where we're going to start looking for reps for next year, and so I would encourage you guys to mention it to people that you think might be great candidates for the either for the younger grade or to replace yourself. So because it's awesome having you guys here, and we got to keep it going.
I think Logan has committed to next year, and so has Adam. So we're going to be looking at sophomores.
Something like that.
Yeah. Thank you. It's about time to do that.
I'll mirror what Lori said. Thanks for your honest comments. I'm glad that I asked you because I appreciate your unvarnished responses. That's why we have you. That's why we have you here. And then I really enjoyed going to the Green School ceremonies yesterday. I'm just really proud of our school district around that. Look forward to Friday when we win both of them. So, thank you.
I'll just go really quick. I attended NSBA, and more to come on that, but I think it's absolutely worthwhile. I learned a ton from school districts around the country and hope to implement some of those changes surrounding many different areas here. leadership WASDA, just a shout out to Ashley. I don't think in a budget presentation that's so quick, you don't get the scope of what the whole state is going through. And most districts around the state are really struggling right now, really struggling with massive layoffs. And we are just not. And that's because of both of your leadership and management of our resources and taxpayer dollars. So, I mean, in this cohort that I'm in, there are 15 other school districts, and they are all laying people off, and they are all really struggling within their own communities. So thank you for that. Just an update, the legislative committee for WASDA met last week, and they reviewed some of the items that we submitted. So thank you for, Director Butler was instrumental in wording the capital projects legislative amendments, and the committee voted unanimously to give those a due pass. So those will be recommended as due pass for our legislative assembly in September. A resolutions committee will be meeting this Friday, so I'm a member of that committee. So those are the ones that we talked about regarding social media and literacy. So hoping we'll get due pass on those as well. And that's it for me this evening. So the board, we're not adjourning. We're going to break for executive session, so you may all go home. And our next meeting will be here at Swiftwater on May 7th at 6:00 p.m. So thank you. We will, no, I'll keep my food, thank you. We'll meet for approximately 30 minutes to review the performance and qualifications of a public employee. And no action will be taken. Thank you.
Thought you were keto. I didn't think you were going to eat it. It smells so dang good.